to the One Up Yours show, everybody, for Friday, September the 26th. I'm Garnet Lee, happy to be here because, as promised, we have Sean Elliott joining us today.
Because I'm sure you've never heard him on another podcast this past week or so.
But John, this is it.
Sorry. This is his last day.
This is it. This is the anchor leg of the
last
relay.
One?
This is his last
What
day.
did someone said something about when the last podcast, when probably the Gama Sutra one, they said that I was like, they accused me of doing my last line of blow before I go into rehab or whatever. But I had actually taped that one many months ago.
Oh, okay. So
and
it wasn't that this is the last line of blow before you go into rehab. Yeah.
There you go. All right, so we got Sean, and as you can tell, we have John Davison. One of the couple reasons that we waited till Friday to record this, so we could have John. Dude, don't apologize. It's great to have you here. And then Shane's here next to me, rocking the Billionaire Boys Club T-shirt
and the sore throat spray.
So you really are sick.
Yeah, I really am sick.
Yeah, you just kind of stayed.
No
There's
booze
a
today.
joke waiting to happen right there. Sore throat spray and a Boys Club shirt. I won't even go there. All right.
I think you already did. Oh, dear. All right, anyway. So here's what we're doing on today's show. We're going to do in the open segment, we got what you've been playing, and from the what we were just talking about, it sounds like we have a lot of excellent games to get into what you've been playing segment. In the second segment, we got the 4-minute warning coming up with excellent questions in that. And then in the news, we've got everything from Jack Thompson being disbarred but already opening his mouth again to Bruce Shelley telling us that everything at Ensemble being closed down wasn't quite as rosy a picture as Microsoft.
Speaking of rosy pictures, see that sexy Mistress Chief with her exposed breast area?
What?
And some of the concept art for that Halo MMO, there was like a sexy Master Chief.
Oh, you know what? I didn't actually look at any of that concept
There was
art.
a lot of helmetless Master Chiefs as well.
What was under the helmet? Like just a dude's face?
Dudes with goatees.
Oh. Wow, so it was just
Gordon Freeman. So after all those, who's better, Master Chief or Gordon Freeman? Like the Prince versus Michael Jackson is irrelevant. It's Gordon Freeman underneath the helmet.
Of course, why not? Right? All right. So John? I think we decided you're going to start off. What you've been playing? Of course, you were traveling.
I was traveling, but before I was traveling, I played Active Life Outdoor Challenge.
Oh,
is that the one that's like with a power pad for Wii?
Comes with a mouse, yeah, with it's like a dance pad. It's like a rebranded dance pad.
That's
so
that
you
thing.
Played a game.
That's that thing that there's video of Alice and I. At
TGS.
At TGS last year from.
So I thought it would be sort of poor man's balance boardy kind of stuff, but it's not just standing on the dance pad and doing the activities. And I can't remember. There's like a dozen or maybe 15 different things that you can do in the game, and it's all very kind of. It looks like Mies, but it's not Mies. It's that kind of graphics, very flat shaded, very colorful. But the first training thing you do, it asks you to sit on the mat.
That's strange.
And you have to lean side to side on the mat and put your hands down on the arrows on either side. And then it has you doing these sort of they call it mudboarding. It's like snowboarding but down a mud slope. And on that one, you have to stand on the back of the pad and move your foot around in front. Like everything, you have to memorize a different set of positions that you have to stand in. Way more confusing than.
Did it ever cross your mind that I'm indoors somewhere sitting on this contraption and this game's called Active Life? Well, it's neither active nor life.
Did it feel like you were simulating any actual activities?
Yoga? Was it
no, it doesn't. It's not that kind of.
So it's not that kind of thing.
So it's like one of them is like you're sitting on a rubber tube going down a slope, and you're kind of leaning while sitting down, and then there's sort of vaguely snowboardy kind of moves, and there's a minecart thing where you have to kind of lean. But on that one, you're also holding the Wii remote and pumping it up and down to kind of make it go faster.
That's kind of fun, man.
I mean, it's not fun to play solo. It's definitely you need people in the room so you can point and laugh at each other kind of game. And it's like $60, and it comes with the pad.
They could do tubing on that where you slap the sides of the pad. I didn't realize.
It's that kind of thing. Yeah, because when you want to scooch it along, you kind of do.
Yeah. What if your ass is so big there's no board left over on either side?
You have to get
you're screwed.
You have to order the larger pad, the mail order pad.
You have to clench to pull your hips up off your hip fat up off the
like
pad.
You're sitting on a bus.
But the way it does,
I love the visual demonstration.
Yeah, clinch to get you. But the interesting thing was that 2-player games on one mat.
It's like Twister.
Cozy.
Kind of.
It's
very
like
cozy.
Yes.
Yeah.
A little too cozy.
Depends on who you're playing with.
Well, it's clearly very little kids. I mean, the other thing is because
family affair.
Every game requires you to be standing in a different position. Was that actually on the video? I think it was. People that watch the video will get that.
Well, yeah.
That was on
It was a
video.
callback to a setup
Yes.
that was in another format.
Do you think it's an adequate, Wii Fit simulator? Like, if you're not going to buy Wii Fit?
No, it's very different from Wii Fit, but what I did find myself craving the whole time was I wish this was just on using the balance board, because it's a much more, I don't know, not intuitive, but it just feels like a better, because it's that kind of squishy Konami dance matty kind of, it's that kind of, it's got like that foam in it.
The crummy. Then you feel like you're sliding all over the place.
I thought that because
on
the control for every single game was different, I kept going back to the manual to try and remember what it was I was supposed to be doing to make it work, and it didn't really make it. Was like, it was a little over. It was very simple with overly complicated rules imposed upon it.
Yeah, see, I was going to say, like, a Wii game for me of that sort, especially where, they're trying to get people engaged in it in that way, you shouldn't have to be going back to the manual. You should just be playing. I mean, you should just pick it up and play it. It should,
You know what's weird? I saw, like, the greatest example of the things that we take for granted as gamers, and being, like, familiar with the way games operate. So, Melissa and I were playing Kabuki. Did you play? You tried
Yeah,
that,
I
John?
played that. I like it.
There's the star power thing where you pantomime the motions on screen. So they'll show a cello, and you're supposed to pantomime the cello. And it was Melissa's turn, and I'm like, pretend you're playing a cello. So she takes the controller in her hand as though, and pretends that is a cello, and starts moving her fingers across the top of it.
As if it could tell that she was doing that.
Yeah,
right?
and that's the thing, is that we know, here's the range of motions that this controller is capable of detecting. But these things are just like magic devices to some people, and like, so like maybe in that case it's simple. It's like, what would you do if you understand the interface? But I mean, imagine other people are gonna have a hard time.
Like, rub your butt on this pad. I don't understand.
You want me to do what?
So do you think it ultimately will succeed or fail? Or
I'm not sure, but they seem to be looking like they're going to make this active life thing a franchise. There's like a bunch of stuff
definitely.
coming under that.
Yeah, that was definitely the route that it seemed like
I
they
think
were
it
going
could
when they
use.
showed it
I mean,
the
it needs
first time.
some refinement. I mean, it's cute, but
It's cute, but
needs some. It needs. I think it needs a bit of a rethink on just because like you can't just like jump on it and it doesn't sort of anticipate what if you're on a balance board, because it's essentially shifting your weight left and right. You can step on it and get an idea of what it is the game's expecting of you, and if you're not quite doing it right, the game would probably be able to adapt to you. But this, it's essentially 8 arrows and 4 buttons or whatever it is. And if you're not standing on the right one, then the mini game just doesn't work.
Aha.
So like on the mud boarding thing, you have to have 1 foot on the back arrow, and then you need to step on and move your other leg sort of left and right, almost like a sort of twister thing, like you're moving it from one to the other. But if you're not stepping on that back one, none of it works.
It doesn't pause the game the moment you don't step on that.
You're
and
just not doing it right. Like, so if you're doing some of it right, it's like if you were to take it and sort of put the analog to a controller, it would be like holding the controller and only jabbing certain buttons and not touching other parts, and that's the way it's behaving. And it's not saying, hey, maybe you should do this a little differently.
Yeah.
And the tutorials weren't as clear as maybe they could have been.
That sounds like an understatement.
It sounds like I won't be trying this game.
Rousing endorsement there.
Yeah.
What I do really like, though, is Mario Super Sluggers. I'm playing it with the kids, so not solo. And we'd played the mini games and we played a couple of games, but what I didn't realize was that it's actually sort of a point-and-click adventure.
Huh? How's that?
The challenge mode, the central like unlock everything mode, is a point-and-click fetch quest adventure with
a plot?
With a plot, with baseball games as the battles.
Huh. That's interesting.
Camelot do this game?
No.
It does sound Camelot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Totally does.
No, isn't it Western developed? Isn't it made by
Western,
the people who made the soccer game?
I think so.
I'm not sure.
But I was like completely. We were playing it, and I was playing it with my youngest son, and he was just sort of, hey, let's try this.
Or is it made by Namco secretly? I don't even remember.
Oh, it's by
it is by Namco.
Namco.
Aha.
So you go in and it starts off and there's plot and there's a Bowser Jr. kind of crashing into the island where all the baseball stadiums are, and you have to go around and you point with the Wii remote and click on where you want to go, and you have to recruit a team to defeat Bowser Jr. and their minions, and across the way you as well as picking up the sort of just the kind of cannon fodder type characters, you have to actively recruit all of the major characters, and all of them there's some kind of puzzle involved, and they're all interdependent. So Wario is stuck on top of this building, and the only way to get to him is to go find Donkey Kong, who can climb up the building and rescue him. But to get Donkey Kong, you got to unlock this other stuff, and you're moving all around the island.
Doesn't sound like a baseball game, does it?
Right, but then
Sounds like Mega Man bosses.
But when you have what is essentially a battle in a role playing, instead of a battle, you're playing some kind of baseball challenge. So it's either you've got to get 3 runs, or you got to, but then it'll start throwing. You need to hit things and knock things over, or
right? Because there's crazy targets and stuff you can hit on the fields.
So all the stuff that's in the mini games and the challenges elsewhere in the game, it sucks into this sort of mini role playing game.
That's cool.
I think kids would really get into that.
It sounds really cool.
And I was like totally surprised, completely kind of like sucked into it. And it's not overly complicated.
How are the pitching and hitting like they were in Wii Sports Baseball?
Very much so.
But
But you have a bit more control over. There's different things you can do with the buttons to do. You can charge things up, and if you want to do there's like special hits,
Right.
different characters have abilities that level up over the course of the game. And there's also it tracks how well you are playing, and and the team that you have working together. And then it has, I can't remember what it calls it, but there's essentially a synergy rating for your team. And if the game perceives that you are kind of working the team together, they get better as a team, and they start doing special moves where if someone hits a home run, 2 guys, if they're in sync, they'll run out to the outside of the field, and one of them will boost the other one. If you hit the button at the right time, they'll catch it as it's going. And there was all this stuff in it, and I was just like, this was the last thing I was expecting from this game.
Is it simple enough for your son to play?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he the hits, just like in Wii Sports, they're a little difficult, but you got to learn the timing. But
that's all baseball games.
But then the charges are, like if you pull back and hold it, then he glows, and then there's this ring that sort of sucks in towards the character, and when it hits kind of another ring that's near his feet, if you hit it exactly that point, then he does a more powerful shot.
So that's pretty easy to sort out.
Yeah, and then the pitching is literally just, it's like Wii Sports.
You just fling it.
Yeah, and because my expectation of it was Wii Sports with Mario characters, and it's way more than that.
I mean, people have overlooked the Mario sports games on Wii because of their kind. They look like the same games that came out on GameCube, but they're still really,
they're
really quality.
I don't know if they've overlooked it. I mean, Strikers was pretty well received.
Strikers was
really popular around the office.
I think a lot of people that wanted to play it with their kids, it was pretty dark.
Well, yeah. And by that you mean it had some violence in it.
There was some violence, but there's the whole kind of the special moves when you were doing the power shots, and it would be all backlit.
Mario looks kind of insidious and evil.
Yeah, and Waluigi has that barbed wire whip that he hits things with, and it's like
he's like whipping Daisy. She's screaming. Like, what are you children playing?
But this, I was very pleasantly. I was, I thought, Mario Sports will play it. We'll play it a couple of times, then it'll disappear.
You're prepared to kind of throw away a couple of afternoons on that and be done with it?
And then be done with it. But now we're in this quest thing, and we're really kind of sucked into it.
That's cool.
So I was surprised by that.
I wonder if since we dismissed that, I wonder if they'll be equally able to interject some unexpected angles into Wii Music. No, you don't think so?
It's pretty unexpected as it is.
Well, but still, I mean, I'm saying you expect it's a game much like baseball, where you expect that you know what you're going to get going in.
You can see where Miyamoto's coming from with the statement he made this week about hoping that schools would use it to encourage kids to appreciate music. Mm-hmm. That you let them wave their arms around and do things in time with the music, and they can start to understand that they have an effect on music. I think it's more coming from an appreciation angle than an interaction angle.
It's true, and music education is all but extinct in public schools in America now. Seriously,
because right now with my kids, we have to raise God knows how many thousands of dollars over the next year if we want our kids to do music.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
That's just because budgets have been cut so far that there's just nothing for it.
It's expensive.
PE, music, and art. I mean, if you want it, you got to find funding.
Yeah.
We served the 8-year-olds in our audience. I wanted to serve the 16-year-olds real quickly and ask if you guys have seen the Diesel Safer Work XXX video that came out the other day.
The what?
Diesel presents the Safer Work XXX video. It's basically a bunch of scenes from a porno, but they painted stuff over the people so that they're now playing instruments, but they put the song together over the top of it, so people might be blowing on harmonicas and flutes and banging drums.
That sounds clever, actually.
And playing bass and all these sorts of things.
We went from
And it's an ad for
no, it's going back.
But it's an ad for like diesel jeans.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because now every time I watch that, no, it's something else. It's some other site. It's like this anniversary thing. But because I watch that, every time I see it, and I watch it again and again, I think I imagine it's Wii Music for some reason. I'm like, because the Wii Music demo was so ridiculous. I'm like,
wow, we so need links.
Go.
We so need links for that.
I figured you guys would. It was like totally the link of the day yesterday.
No,
it's going around, man.
We out there.
So that's all I've really played.
Family fare. Right
I was fascinated by you guys talking about Africa last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that sounds like exactly the kind of thing. My kids are really into.
You ready for the photo safari?
I think they'd be into watching that.
Aquanauts Holiday came out this week in Japan, but
really?
I'm going to wait until I go next week to buy it.
So is that kind of like Endless Ocean, only in high def?
Yeah, basically. Except you're not a diver, you're in a submarine, so you're faster and you're more maneuverable, but you can't like pet the fish. Actually, there's no fish petting involved.
But it's photography driven again.
Mm-hmm. And it has really realistic graphics as opposed to Endless Ocean.
Oh,
because Endless Ocean has been like a really big hit. I mean, it's sold really well.
And actually, this one, Aquanauts Holiday, is seemingly coming to America, whereas Africa might not be.
Oh,
the
really?
trick to these, like maybe they should have. I mean, for one, it needs to have interesting species with interesting behaviors. So, like if it has like an Indonesian mimic octopus, which are just amazing, they assume the shape of like a flounder or something and behave like 1 minute, then they're acting like a lobster or a crayfish.
What is going to happen to this mine of useless knowledge that you have in your head when you have nowhere to
You'll be playing a game where you play as this octopus.
That stuff should always play into games,
with real-time
right? I mean,
octo camo.
You never know.
It's been
for games. I think if you're into interesting behaviors for creatures and stuff, if you're ever doing games with creatures in them and locations,
I hope you have an outlet for it, because you always have like 10 things that you would never expect.
But in that case, I was saying, like, you could have
Indonesian camo octopuses.
So, like, you could have this like really interesting animal that you find and see its behavior, and then you could even you could take some quiz on it. But it's based entirely on observation, So it's like, imagine your son or something. He sees this octopus, and it's like, can you identify, this creature, whatever? Like, what does it do? And it has to be multiple choice or whatever, fairly simple. But then
there are
like an optional layer.
Scholastic has a franchise called Animal Genius, which is like a really scaled down version of that. And if they were ever to develop that and make it older, that would be the kind of direction they would take it. Because as it is, it's aimed mainly at preschoolers, but it teaches concepts like this is a predator and this predator chases after this animal for food, and it's sort of introducing some really basic concepts.
Right, and in this game, you could actually see it occurring and observe it firsthand.
But hearing you guys talk about it, it sounded like
it's really neat.
Fantastic.
And the more I think about it, you're right. Endless Ocean ended up selling a reasonable amount of copies and made a profit. And I think Sony should bring these games out because it speaks to a different casual audience, and not everybody wants to shoot people in every game.
Right. So that's what I was going to ask. I mean, BS aside, I actually did think Africa sounded pretty cool. I'd like to see it. Why do you think that they won't bring it out here?
I think they should. I mean, and a lot of people ask me, is it something you can play if you have no knowledge of Japanese? And you probably can. It's too bad there isn't like a good FAQ anywhere online for it, because there's really not that much text in the game.
But let's face it, Sony has released more obscure stuff
absolutely.
in this country than Africa.
Right.
Yeah, Flow.
Yeah, and Flow did really well.
Flow did really well.
Do you think Africa could be a PSN download?
Maybe that could be it. I mean,
is it a massive thing?
Well, there's a lot of
there's tons of video on disc, so I mean, they'd have to cut some of that out probably. Okay. But I think it should get a retail release.
Dude, I think it definitely should. I think they've already demonstrated they can sell these like sort of chill out games on PS3 easily, and that people are into the whole a game that's just there solely to be engaged by the visual fidelity of it.
Yeah,
that's the game for it.
I think the success of something like Planet Earth has shown that a lot of people who are into Blu-ray are into animals and nature. So
there's a lot in there. Thinking do you ever? I basically in the past few months have been turning Google Earth and stuff into a game.
Yeah.
And it's just that kind of stuff. Just the sense of being able to be someplace else, and in that case, you just go around, here's a street. You can take a virtual tour of a neighborhood.
There's a huge escalation in the brands that you associate with that kind of content starting to step, like National Geographic is getting into games
and
in a
National
big
Geographic
way.
is the co-sponsor of Africa. They're all over it. I mean, it's all throughout it.
Because they're tight with Sony.
How could that not come out here?
And in terms of going somewhere and seeing something, I was showing my friend the game, and in the beginning you're in a Jeep just driving across the savannah in the morning. It looks beautiful, and he's like, "Wow, I went to Africa on a safari, and it looks just like that." I was like, "That's quite."
That's pretty awesome.
Is that game sort of whitewashed, or can you come across say that carcasses of elephants that have been raided for their ivory or black
Can you
rhinos.
go be a poacher?
You can go get blood diamonds. I haven't seen any of that, but I have seen animals interacting, but I haven't seen them like killing each other yet. But there do seem to be,
or just like dying even and naturally.
Right.
They're eating one another.
Yeah.
At least.
I mean, I'm still not deep enough. Really, I haven't gotten to like the big predators like lions or anything yet. But I'd like for that. And if it isn't in this, if they make another one, it'd be really cool if they go overboard with the interactions.
The best scene: a bunch of hyenas fighting lions inside of a carcass of an elephant.
That'd be hot.
That really happens. I saw it on a National Geographic special.
Africa too. Here we come.
But it sounds. I mean, from hearing you describe it last week, it sounds like it could be really ripe for downloadable content.
Oh, definitely.
Like downloading behaviors, downloading like
new animals, new places.
Like missions would be essentially safaris where you're gathering certain, and then they could download the behaviors in like you have to go find the hyenas and the lions hunting
and
together.
I haven't gotten into the online yet, but I think it is things like here's a contest, like who can take the best picture of this, and you submit, and like it's kind of a community thing.
That's awesome.
I mean, National Geographic are getting like heavy, and there's the DS products. They're on this. There's a question pack for Buzz Quiz TV that's National Geographic, and at the same time you've got other. Oh, the winger's here.
That's enough of your hippie Africa games.
Dude, I like that. Yeah, I mean, like you have to like understand the ecosystem enough to find the creatures, right? You have to know like what their prey is, what sorts of climate they like, and if the world's big enough to allow you to go on a search for them, So if it's like a certain type of deer or something and it's high altitude, then you have to go up the mountain or whatever.
And knowing that the equipment upgrades as well, that that there'd be downloadable like lenses and stuff that would allow you to.
Science games are a new trend. I mean, Spore is definitely a science game, and it's hard science. And
you could start tagging animals and then watching them in a little PDA.
tag animals and then control their brains. And
Jim will now jump out of the helicopter and secure the wildebeest.
Well, actually, I'm going to try to convince Matt and Ryan to let me put Africa and Aquanauts on like the one-up show.
Dude, like I think that'd be a great idea.
I would love to see that
festival.
I've been fascinated.
Animal festival.
Since they were so ambiguous when they first showed it 3-4 years ago. The fact that it now exists as a product and it sounds pretty cool.
It is. I mean, it isn't as unbelievably awesome as you might have dreamed it could be, but I think the experience it gives you is unlike anything else.
Well, I don't think. I would disagree. I'd say that it's the other. And when I saw it, I was wondering what the hell is this thing going to be. Right. So I wasn't dreaming it was going to be unbelievably awesome. And the fact that they put it together into this cool photo safari immersion in the savannah side.
It also sounds like such a great response to the Wii. Like you want
definitely.
something that's high def and taking advantage of the technology, but is still in the spirit of the kind of experience that you find on the Wii.
That's like when I saw it in this ocean, I'd already seen the trailer for Aquanauts, and I was like, well, it's the same thing, but like this is a genre where visual fidelity really does matter to me. Like I don't want to have to believe that kind of looks like a fish if I blink, close my eyes.
In the same way as Planet Earth, this is something I could easily see like my mom sitting around with me checking out, right? Or my dad be like, wow, that's like that would be something they'd walk by and they'd say, what the hell is that? That's cool. Like that they would totally click to. Did anyone try out Life with PlayStation?
I did. It's still really early. It's functionality wise, it doesn't have. I think the Wii one is actually a little better for news because this has a font problem. The font's really small, so unless you have an HDTV, you're kind of screwed.
Oh, so it's totally designed for HD.
Yeah, it's very, very designed for HD. I think that's kind of a problem right now. But it just started, and I'm sure it'll get better.
What else you got, man?
I played a little bit of Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway, and I don't think I was in the mood or something.
Did you play the previous ones?
Yeah.
And did you like them?
Ago. Yeah, it was okay. I mean, but I wasn't. Maybe I'm just super saturated with this kind of experience right now.
Wait. There's no other experiences that are like ordering your guys around and being in the game at the same time.
See, that didn't really like grab me.
What about the close-knit camaraderie you have with your squad mates? They're like real characters. They're the same characters in the other games.
It didn't. I mean, I did appreciate the way that it introduced the game. I loved the whole kind of TV kind of previously on Brothers in Arms.
That was pretty cool.
But then about literally 10-15 minutes in, something inside me it had nothing to do with the quality of it or the caliber of it or whatever it's offering up. There was something emotionally in me just said, I just can't be bothered.
It wasn't the element of you felt like you're babysitting everyone the whole time?
No, it was just that I don't want to play this.
You've moved on to the mudboarding stage of your life.
I have, clearly. Yeah, I want to stand on a foamy rubber mat and.
Yep, you're ready to slap your hands on the ground.
Is it World War II shooter fatigue, or is it specific to this game?
I don't know if it. I think it might be that, or it might be just shooter fatigue. Because
the shooting season just kicked off. You can be fatigued now.
So I don't think it's that. I think it's that the sort of the vibe and the just a lot of things about it, and none of it grabbed me. None of it pulled me in and said, I really want to know what happens here. I just I was playing it. It was late. I got to a choke point in the game where I was getting killed like 5 times, and I'm just like, I'm done. I could happily never play this ever again. And that's entirely subjective. It's got nothing to do with the quality of the game.
I'm on the other side of the equation, which is I totally love the tactical part of it. I first of all, I adored the first 2 games. I love the idea of being both in the game physically and playing it, and playing it down the gun sights, and at the same time maneuvering, a couple of fire teams, because really the whole thing is like you're a squad.
Isn't it Call of Duty meets Full Spectrum Warriors?
It's like it's like if you played a multiplayer online shooter and your teammates actually listen to you.
That's sort of true, which is sad, because that's
what you could do if you had teammates that work together in a game.
That's absolutely true. That's also why multiplayer is broken, because multiplayer is just you playing a single person and one person's ordering people around, and everyone fucks off.
And when you die, you have to wait like 3 minutes, like Counter-Strike style, to spawn again.
That part's broken, but I really
so you
like
think in a post Call of Duty 4 world, it still is an awesome valid game?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. This is a thinking-paced shooter. It's much slower speed. The whole idea here is not to shoot and kill everybody yourself. It's to maneuver your people into the right positions, which is why it's a command
cover
and control
and suppress.
game.
Every firefight's a tactical encounter, as opposed to
absolutely
say get all these guys and move forward so they stop spawning or whatever. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to dismiss COD4 with that either, actually, because I've been playing it again lately, and I'm kind of really liking it now, but I mean, it's different. It's night and day from COD.
The biggest thing to me, and I've seen some people complaining about the AI, but to me, the AI in this game seems like it has taken a significant step forward from where they were before, because it responds a lot very contextually. It used to be like you'd get a guy pinned down, and even if you were suppressing the hell out of him, he'd hunker down and just stay there. Like now, when you start to get a little bit of a flank or an angle on them, you can see them get scared and try to run off. You can see the different AI fire teams try and maneuver into better positions to get around you, to get firing positions on your side. You have to move a lot. It is definitely a puzzle game.
I need to try it again, I think, when I'm in a different mood, but you
have to be able to go fast, because let me tell you,
I started playing it, and the things that struck me first were that it's another one of these, and the environment feels dead.
The environment is dead.
Why can't I open this fucking door that's half open? Why can't I walk down this corridor, which I can see? It's just got some I don't know, like a shopping trolley or a broken bed or something. I should be able to push it out of the way and go down and shoot through that window. Oh, and by the way, the fucking windows don't break either.
No, I agree.
That's a huge problem. It's actually in Crisis Warhead in really bizarre ways. So, for example, the game shows you that you can blow up buildings and towns and wood fences and stuff, and then later on you're in mine tunnels and you'll go down a dead end, and what does it block the dead end with? Just 2x4 slats. There's still stuff behind it, but it's like, I mean, I understand because I'm familiar with the grammar of the design that okay, I'm not supposed to go here, but to anyone else it's like, hey, I already know I could break wood. Maybe I'm supposed to break this and go through it. It's like Gordon Freeman and a crowbar or something. But it's instead of putting rock or something there, it's weird. But that's the worst.
Some of this results from the fact that the game's been under development for a long time. So it is I think it's just on the original Unreal Engine 3, and you can see it has a lot of those old. I mean, it really evidences a lot of the Unreal 3 engine problems that have gotten maybe improved on some, but it really has a lot of that texture pop in.
I hear the graphics are just inconsistent from level to level.
They are kind of inconsistent from level to level. I don't think that it's ugly game by any stretch of the imagination, not when you consider all the other things that it's doing, but you play this game because you love the tactics of it, because you love carrying some command and control into the firefight, and not just running around the gun, because the parts where the things that it does, you like. First of all, you like the story part. I think the story part fails.
I mean, I seriously, I mean, I'm like 20, 30 minutes in. I mean, it lost me that soon.
But it carries the story of the last game.
But what's weird is you could tell that they put a lot of effort into the dialogue, into the individual lines of dialogue, and they put a lot of money into the voice acting, because the voice acting is really good.
And they're really trying to establish what's his name, Matthew or whatever, as the central.
But they do a crap job of building the characters around you. You don't really ever build any connection with the guys who are in your fire teams, and if
they die, are they dead for good?
If they die, they're replaced, and if they get injured, like if they get shot and they're like, oh man, I'm bleeding, or whatever. When you get to the end of the level, they just like pop back up and they're ready to go.
Dude, speaking of bleeding, I saw a trailer that was just gratuitous, like bones and meat and blood, and it was way more violent.
That was weird. They started showcasing the trailers where they got like the bullet time, like murder porn thing, where you hit someone with a bazooka and it's like it goes into like slow mo and they like ragdoll.
Seriously, that trailer is like, look at these chunks of Gib.
Did you see the story Patrick had on that over on the MTV Multiplayer blog? He talked to the game director, and the game director basically said, "Hey, yeah, you know what? We included gore in the game, and it was intentional, and we're trying not to be gratuitous about it. We're just basically saying like this is war.
War is hell.
It was hell. One of the reasons that they chose Operation Market Garden is because it made a good back and forth tactical battle because basically the Allies lost." So you're going into a historical World War II battle where you're not just the Allies who are going to kick ass your way through Europe. You're going to lose basically.
Let's be honest with ourselves here, though. I mean, there's like an insane amount of just disturbing and violent things you're going to see if it's in the least bit accurate. But when you say let's put a slow-mo effect on and zoom in the camera when someone goes flying through the air.
Say we're not being gratuitous about it.
I don't necessarily think that it's. I mean, it's just a guess because I've never actually been in combat, but I don't imagine that it's like all of a sudden when you get a kill, you just see that shit happening in slow motion and all of a sudden everything else is just disappears. And
I think that what it's all about is they're really obviously we're going for this super cinematic look and feel, very much that Saving Private Ryan effect, especially
Band of Brothers,
especially the D-Day part at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. We know where he has the part where he can't hear anymore from shell shock.
But that's the difference in the intro for Saving Private Ryan. What happens is the camera is jostling, it's moving around everywhere, and what happens is it'll be following one of the principal characters, and it will be focused on their face. But all around, blurry behind them, are people trying to stuff their intestines back in. There are all these other things, and it's like this goes back to your thing about Dead World, and that's but in Private Ryan, it's like that's the canvas that the war is occurring on, and it's
that's
like
why it's effective.
It's not and because it's there, but it's not just like let's go zoom in on this guy like it's Fangoria magazine and figure out just how they got the right chicken entrails to like pull the shot off or something. That's the difference I'm saying between I think it's gratuitous to just zoom in and be like fuck yeah.
So the stumbling points for me are first of all that part, like the story and the characters not coming through, that part not working, despite the fact that it's very cinematic. The parts where you're playing like single player shooter style, I don't understand why they felt they needed to add that in. I realize they're using Unreal Engine. I realize that the down like now when you're firing your gun, the firing gun part feels good, but it's not a great single player shooter. So there are parts where you're on your own as Baker and you're going through a shooter, but now you're going through a shooter in that engine
with your blood-soaked gun.
Well, because
and
that will invite direct comparisons to Call of Duty.
Exactly, and it won't hold up well at all. I mean, that part just really deteriorates a lot. So, and then the multiplayer that was done by the guys who did it's Rockstar New England or something. The guys who did
Gearbox didn't do
they had the guys who did the bully multiplayer Xbox 360, and it's like why did you add this on here?
I think this is still going to be a really big game. You forget the first two Brothers in Arms were huge hits.
I agree, and what's funny is that I feel like I'm defending it because the core. I wish they had just stuck to the core stuff and not gotten caught up in some of the other things, and maybe spent all the extra effort on getting the story part right. I don't know. Did anyone else? Did you get the bikes for Burnout Paradise?
I did. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I went.
Man.
Yeah, you started talking about it last week. And
Hope you didn't get any trophies last week.
Oh yeah,
they didn't carry over.
And now you can get that. Yeah. So man, they're so fast. I really like them.
As I was saying, I play first person. They're almost too fast for me.
Yeah,
like fast, David, but they're super forgiving.
They are forgiving. You bounce off things.
And also, I mean,
it's fun.
It's great because all the things that are wrong in a lot of it, like Milky really loves the MotoGP games or whatever, and I find them unplayable because they're
same here.
Super sensitive.
I don't ever want to touch a front or rear brake in my entire life.
Exactly. Front rear brake,
but
leaning,
in this,
all that
I mean,
kind of stuff,
you can pop a wheelie and do a half-mile wheelie and steer. I mean, it's not pretending to be realistic at all.
No.
You're in just a different shaped model that appears to go faster, But I mean, I think the way that it's changed the nature and the way that the environment feels.
It's.
Do you race
you go down by
bikes
the docks,
against cars, or is it strictly
it's bikes?
It's bikes against bikes. There is traffic in the city though.
But once you're on a bike, any of the it triggers the new challenges.
Bike only.
Which are bike only.
So David Ellis was complaining to me, just not complaining, but he was saying, well, it's kind of a bummer the bikes don't have boost. I don't.
They're
think
so fast. You
I
don't,
know.
You really don't need it because the acceleration is insane.
Right. And once you get them up to top speed, if you lean down over the gas tank on the sport bike, man, that thing goes.
The other thing that
goes.
some people I noticed were saying that they wish you could do is you can't do endos, right? You can only do wheelies.
Right, because it doesn't. Well, again, it doesn't have the front and rear brake thing.
Yeah.
So you can't do the endos.
But I mean, it didn't bother me at all. But also the fact that the bike just kind of rights itself, and you're just.
I wanted more ragdoll. Like your guy disappears in like 1 second. Like,
yeah.
There's no people. There were never any people in Burnout, so suddenly there's people where you're just bike riders.
And it's a whole other physics system.
And it's also because of the rating. It's only 10, so they can't ragdoll the guy off. It's the thing, because then
I have no problem with that.
It's the reason MotorStorm is a T, because when your car explodes and it ragdolls the guy, I mean, that's the reason it's a T right there.
Yeah. Did you check out the night and day cycle?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude! Right at dusk, like the way they got the lighting is just spot on.
We were driving around, and there's that sort of 80s Lamborghini Countach looking car that has the green boost at night when its lights pop up and everything, and it's just the whole look and vibe of it is. It's fantastic.
I was excited just to experience like a renaissance for a game. This doesn't usually happen. There isn't a time when a game that everyone was into 9 months ago, suddenly everyone wants to play it again.
I put it when we picked it up. We downloaded it the day it came out. We didn't get to play it till the following day. And in the news feed, it said 960,000 people played Burnout yesterday.
Fucking awesome!
That's
Congratulations,
awesome.
Criterion.
There's proof that it works.
Absolutely,
that's awesome.
Because that's only
the
half the people that bought it were playing it again.
And the full game is now on PSN
for $30.
For $30, so.
Very
Excellent.
cool.
Very good. Sean's got a bunch of stuff, so I think we should turn Sean.
Let's do it.
Okay, the quick version playing Peggle Knights. I didn't learn.
Peggle Knight's sexy.
I didn't learn what the Knights was until I started playing it, and the cool thing about it is that now the Knights is because you get to learn about all the characters, like their dreams and aspirations. So it's like the equivalent of when they go to bed, who they really want to be. So this time when I'm playing, I get to find out that Bjorn the unicorn wants to be a crime-fighting unicorn, and that Claude the crayfish wants to become like a Godzilla-sized crayfish and stomp through Paris because of the French is presumably eating too much crayfish or whatever. So it's really doing interesting stuff with characterization that I didn't anticipate. I mean,
that's going to fuel a lot of new fan fiction, I think.
No, but that's all true. Everything is true that I said, and of course, what the way it communicates these stories is the screens. It's a painting. They have these really cute paintings that are the backgrounds, and then they align the dots that you're bouncing your ball around on top of those. But it's basically. It's like you were saying, Garnet. It's the same game, but all new maps and new music.
It's 60 missions and 60 challenges, right?
Yes, and I believe there's a new character, which I'm excited about.
What does he do?
Because I don't know. I haven't unlocked it yet.
Oh.
What happens is as you go through each one, you fill in a portrait on the wall, and I can recognize the silhouettes of all of them except for one. And so that makes me think,
I got to get there and hit that damn green pin.
But those are rad because in multiplayer, when you choose one, they play differently, right? I mean, if you got Claude, then you have the pinball flippers on the side of the map, or if you get. So I'm kind of curious what else they're doing. But that's a fun game.
Dude, seriously, I'm all about. I fucking love Peggle.
What makes it so good? No other game really capitalizes on positive reinforcement to the same degree. I mean, it just makes you feel so good for doing so little over and over again, and it's a really smart system. And the whole time I'm playing, I was thinking about one of these days. They'll develop a casino version of it. It'll obviously have to be very different because casino games, you don't have left and right buttons and shoot and stuff. But they have increasingly complicated casino games like, Texas Tea and stuff where there's all these bonus boards and extra stuff happens. But if you were playing a casino game and you felt that good, because it reminds me of it when you have a really good draw in a casino and it's like you just keep hearing the ding, ding, ding and you're winning and you get the sense that everything's going your way. But the entirety of the time you spend playing Peggle is that same feeling. So if you could do that, and even if it's like one penny that's coming up when you're hitting certain balls or something.
Dude, they could easily do it now because it works great on my iPod. And I mean, all the iPod has is the touch wheel and the center button. I mean, it works fantastic. I burned up the battery on my iPod countless times playing that game.
Right. They'd have to accelerate it because the other thing about casinos is you don't want people sitting there for every hand taking 10 minutes to prepare for it or something, But real quick version of playing Mercenaries 2 a bit on PC, and it's a very quick and dirty port. Like the aspect ratios and stuff, they really, you could tell they just really didn't care about making it a proper PC game.
Does the up-res help any?
I don't know. It's not the best looking game.
Really?
It seems to me, doesn't it? I think
The
maybe
models
even
are quite simple, aren't they? I mean,
the whole world is. I mean, you can understand why because of the scale, but then again, look at how nice GTA 4 looks.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I'm enjoying playing that game in co-op is just because it's so janky that it's fun to play that and experience that with someone else. So, like a quick example would be we're raiding some compound, and then we see that there's this like army bunker type thing. And people keep coming out the door. They don't really come. By saying coming out the door, I mean they materialize in the doorway, which is closed and never opens. And then we figured out that another one will only appear after you kill the one that's come out. So we started shooting them at the door and because they drop ammo and money. And we're like, oh, this is a good thing. So we keep doing this. And then we were like, no, this is fucking too much work. So we parked the car in front of the door. And they'd spawn in the engine block and keep coming out. And then finally, we're like, we got to do something about this fucking bunker. So we called in multiple airstrikes. We finally blew it up, and it's on fire and everything, and it's rubble. And they're still spawning in there on fire. It's like the fucking Terminator coming out of the thing. And so even though that's ridiculous, it's still fun in the same way that, you know, there's like the training mode where it's like, learn how to use emplacements. And so we get on these twin grenade launchers, and I just turn over and shoot Rory, who's on the other one, and it blows his up and blows him through the roof, where his head's sticking through the roof and his feet are coming down the bottom, and he's doing a running animation in place. And then I can take my time and complete the challenge and stuff. But it's it's like a fun game for that kind of thing. I played we had a version of Mirror's Edge in the office. I think both you and Shane have played it.
I played it before at E3, but I didn't play it this time.
And that's pretty interesting. I mean,
how do you feel about the controls? Because I was having an argument with Matt Leone because he felt that they weren't that different than regular FPS controls. I think they're completely different.
That's because it's the next Matt Leone game. You know that Matt Leone is once he locks on a game.
Right. But
I thought the controls were fine. Everything.
But like the whole up-down thing took me a little while to get used to. Like the concept of like up button and down button.
What's the up button and down button?
Like the context sensitive, like on the shoulders. Like instead of having a regular jump button or crawl button,
it does 3-dimensional control. So you've got pitch your direction.
No.
You have
an
elevation.
You have like an interaction button. That interaction button will be jump if you're jumping, or like the other one will be like slide if you're sliding. There's one that for like
no, it's different. Like so. The button that you use to jump is different than the one that you use to pull your legs up if you're hurdling something, or to go on a slide if you want to go in.
Those are explained to me as like up and down buttons that like imply like up action and down action.
I internalized all that really, really quickly. Like the controls weren't an issue at all. And like,
I mean, it works, but I think it is like it makes sense to you. But when you come back from it, you're like, this isn't like a regular shooter at all.
Well, it's not. It's more like
Definitely
much more like Portal. I think it has more in common with Portal and the overall feel and experience of that game than any. I mean, just erase the thoughts of most shooters from your mind.
I mean, it also feels like a platformer in a racing game.
Yeah, both of those. I mean, what I appreciate about it is that it like takes and inverts the normal scenario for a lot of games. And you're running away from something and you're not shooting. The entire time. And there might have been sequences in games now and then where you're doing that, or you're chasing someone. There was like a cool sequence in Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, where you're doing that. But it makes it a whole other game. But everything, the sense of like movement, of navigating this environment, of vertigo, when you jump up and you grab something with your hands and you're sort of like working your way around a ledge, all this makes perfect sense. I had some people ask like if it should be in third person. I was like, what? I mean, the whole point is that this game communicates that experience of free running from that point of view. And that's working really well. The
spatial, I would agree. Like you're talking about basically like the spatial immersion, like the way you feel in the space and the 3 dimensions, and you get a feel for where you're at.
It's so different to go up to a ledge and look straight down and look between the tips of your shoes down like 50 stories than it is to stand in third person on the top of a building.
Like third person, I've played third person games where you're jumping across rooftops, and maybe it's exciting like Assassin's Creed, but it's not exhilarating and scary in the way that Mirror's Edge is, and you will fall a lot. They're hard jumps.
What it does is it constantly gives you a pressure to keep moving. This is the thing with the game. They know it would become a very static game of cautious maneuvers and not the game they wanted. So what happens is there's always a helicopter chasing you in the air and shooting at you, or you're chasing someone else in one of the scenes that we played, and you have to keep moving. And when it comes together, you see their ideal scenario. It's just this really dramatic thing where, like, because in other options you could run full speed at a door and just bash it right open. So it's such a great feeling when you're out in an open area and you're vulnerable. You have 3 guys with guns shooting at you. You run, jump over a fence, slide underneath the truck, and then run up to a door full speed and just like shoulder bash it down and then run inside. And it feels like all of a sudden like relief. And then even more so, you run down the hall and you get to an elevator, you jump inside and then punch the button. It looks all great. You know, you never push any buttons. You just like smack it really hard, and then the door closes and the bullets, like you can see them like coming through the door. Perfect. But the problem though is that when you don't have that experience, what you have is that you die. And you have to die, and then you do it again and again. And what happens is it reminds me of the Stuntman games or something. So instead of playing this ideal scenario, I mean, what you want, right, is the perfect stunt performance. But what you get that way as a stunt person through repeated practice. Right. And a lot of the missions, when I played them and when I saw other people play them, looked very much like a Stuntman game. I'm learning how to put on a show. Come back to me in 30 minutes, John, and then I'm going to show you what this level looks like when you are playing it correctly, and then you get that very streamlined, choreographed, perfect, scenario.
I mean, I see that comparison, but unlike Stuntman, there isn't just one way. Like, usually when I would play Mirror's Edge, there were 2 or 3 paths, and the easy path, you won't die that much. If you try the medium or hard path, you will die a ton, and it's not graceful. For me, I think the game is at its strongest, when you're like just racing through something, everything is working, you're just making those jumps, you get to the end of the level.
Well, that's what, as you brought up Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed, I think the reason a lot of people responded to it is because it made you look good always.
Right.
Like,
this doesn't. You'll miss big jumps, and then it takes the wind out of your sails. It ruins the tempo of the level a little bit, so you have to start over.
You die a lot, though. They're not always like. I would say you're being generous in the 3-level demo I played. There were parts where there were clearly different ways to go. But for the most part, there was one way.
Really?
And they marked that way with the red objects.
Even in that first level, there are more expert paths that aren't marked by the red things that you wouldn't necessarily try.
And you can use the triangle jumps and things to get through them.
I think the game is not at its best when you're in there's times when a game slows down and you are not being pursued, and then you're more like looking around, trying to figure out how to make the jump you need to make, and then it's a little more traditional.
You'll die most cases there. Like, when you're running through the aqueduct, if you're about like 2 full seconds off, if you like stumble on one of your jumps or hurdles or something, you'll die. The helicopter will kill you, and you'll do that part again. So I think for some people, that'll be a great experience because they've got the whole time trial thing and stuff, and it's a speedrunner's game.
I missed part of this
sense.
Are there paths that are not laid out with the red visual cues?
Yes.
So those are like the expert paths.
Yeah, not every level has those, but like on the one show, they show one in the first level that I didn't know existed. I was like, oh yeah, you could do that.
And imagine finding that. You would find that most likely through trial and error.
Right.
So a speedrunner, in the same way that a speedrunner could find that super fast route through Mario Brothers or something.
Exactly.
But you'd probably be lucky if you first encountered it. But back to another good thing about it is like the solution for the hand-to-hand combat, the slow motion. It's kind of like part and parcel with the objects being red. They're not red in the world's fiction. They're red to indicate that you have this runner sense. This is basically what the world looks like through the mind of an expert, of a parkour expert or something. They just have this. Immediately scan a surface and intuit, here's a handhold here, here's a foothold here, I could flip over this. And that's like a really elegant solution, I think, to that, because the challenge...
it's like a HUD without...
it's like a visor HUD.
Exactly. That's it, 100%. But to think about this game, though, you want to keep people moving through this environment that they don't know, and where death is like the punishment for every single misstep. So you really have to give all these cues. I mean, that must be a huge challenge. And the other option they offer is that you could press one of the buttons and it quickly snaps the camera to the direction you need to be heading. And that can work great, except depending on where you're going, that might turn you around 180 degrees and disorient you all of a sudden. Like you're...
So they're very bullish about this game. There was a statement on Wednesday where they said that they thought they were going to sell 3 million copies of this game.
Wow.
It strikes me as kind of arty and experimental, and I mean I think the aesthetic is fantastic, and I'm like really pleased that someone has really, I mean, it's a very European aesthetic.
I think that's a little, 3 million's out there. I think 2 million is possible, especially Europe, but I think it's a great first step, and I hope it is a success because I'd like to see what they can do with it moving on, because my one problem is I love the aesthetic. It's very clean and modern, but it's a little Spartan and bare, and like
it's supposed to be, though. It's like the world, it's like the hyper scrubbed world of 2001.
It's true, but when you're
and that's the point.
When you're running through these office buildings, like, wouldn't it be awesome if there were people everywhere? There aren't any people. Like, there are no people in this world.
Unless they're trying to kill you or something. Or unless
and you could brush past them and make sure they didn't drop the vase off the... Oh, wait, wrong.
I don't know. I mean, if it's already kind of like a linear on-rails-ish game a little bit, like, why not have more crazy things happening around you? And, like, I don't know. I think they could take it further.
To me, just aesthetically, and just, it has such a... To me, I automatically associate it with PlayStation 3 as opposed to 360 or PC, because
why is that?
Because there's a sort of European modern aesthetic.
It's very European.
To PS3 that the European market has done a better job of leveraging.
You mean the
anywhere else.
marketing, or what?
Just
do you
in
mean?
terms of the way that sort of the modern kind of sparse look and feel that they managed to pull off early on with the PS3, and I think the aesthetic of this game ties in very much with what that kind of European PS3
DICE
vibe
is a Swedish studio, and the world of Mirror's Edge is a world designed by IKEA. Like, imagine if IKEA were civic planners. This is the world of... And it's cool, though, because the people in that world are rebelling against it. Your character, Faith, I mean, your whole group of runners are those who are rebelling against this, like,
conformity shelf, and
and also throw some like Fear of Finland in there, and with like Nokia and stuff. It's all about being watched and monitored, and everyone communicating every second, and like.
And is everything all the way through that kind of white scrubbed?
We've seen a green level, but they've really only shown. Like,
I watched the
3
video
levels.
of the green level, and my initial response to the green level was disappointment because
it was green.
Because I like that sort of purity of vision that it has, and like that early concept video. I mean, the fact that it had a gun in it was a little jarring, but the fact that they had this like super clean, like you said, 2001, like this sort of not this like
THX 1138.
Yeah, very kind of like
it's so like perfect
truly
for
sci-fi kind of environment that they'd built that was very clean and pure, and it had like a real genuine. It's like it had been properly art directed. Like they had an idea of what they wanted it to look like and the vibe that they wanted to give off, and they pulled it off with everything from the way that Faith looks to even her shoes. Like she's wearing those like crazy like.
So you like the character Faith, because that's interesting. Like when you switch into talking about her, I would say that of the art direction of the game, she's the weakest link to me.
You think?
Yeah, I think she's just there's some.
She reminds me of Oni.
Aeon Flux.
Yeah, I feel like that she needs something to give her
I think
some
the tattoos
sort of
and stuff are a bit much, but
a bit, yeah. And bland. There's
She's got
something like
Shadow. What's the guy? What's Snake Eyes' nemesis in G.I. Joe?
Storm Shadow?
Storm Shadow. She's got Storm Shadow tattoos. She does.
I'm still rooting for that game, though. I like it.
I'm rooting for the game. I'm just saying I think that.
Well, I am too, but I thought 3 million struck me as like a little out of touch with.
Absolutely.
It's like art. It's a little too arty for that.
It could. I don't know. Look at how successful Portal was. We don't know the numbers, and we never will because of Valve and the way things are going. But if you look at the popularity of it, especially with its ability to generate memes and a continued following, people still doing versions of the song and everything.
Yeah.
This game is probably going to do well with that same group. And those same people are gonna start doing fan drawings of Faith. They're gonna this Halloween.
Maybe they'll give her some personality.
Every girl who's into games is gonna show up at a Halloween party wearing a black bob and with Storm Shadow tattoos drawn in black marker on her, or Black Flag Henry Rollins.
Well, and the other thing going for it is instantly recognizable, unique, fresh and new.
See, that's what I mean about the aesthetic. Like to me. I think because like the first game I ever played on the original PlayStation was Wipeout. There is something about that super modern Wipeout aesthetic.
Speaking of that is
intrinsically tied to the sort of grammar of PlayStation. And I think Mirror's Edge is the one of the best recent kind of manifestations of that I don't associate that look and feel with Xbox. It's a very Euro PlayStation 3 like.
That's such a weird, I think that's like a really idiosyncratic, and personal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying
because you've got the range of where you've got the world of Fallout 3 and Oblivion and Bioshock and all these other games residing in most people's minds with Xbox 360 associations, and there's some range there. It's not just all, but I mean, if you get nothing but like Gears of War and like Black Site and all these other games that do have that same grimy, I can see that. I guess, yeah. Like people say,
I think there's a sort of spirit to the PlayStation brand that, despite the fact that it's had the crap kicked out of it over the last 10 years, is still there to anyone that remembers it from the beginning. And I really
not the PlayStation that the crap kicked out of it, but the brand identity.
The brand identity of PlayStation.
Aesthetic,
that very
thing.
And I think Mirror's Edge is such an interesting and for EA to be as bold and not to and to have this kind of singular aesthetic vision for something. It's unusual for them.
Well, I think it's really bold because I know people continue to take issue with me about this point, but I still think that one of their stumbling blocks is a game that looks like a shooter, has gunplay in it, but the guns are not just discouraged, but they're discouraged by not being particularly effective or very fun to use.
Were you on the One Up FM when they talked about this?
I was not. I don't believe.
I listened to that, and I thought. I think Matt was talking about how he thought that the one thing that would come out of this is there's a lot of ideas that are being done in first person for the first time that we are going, regardless of how well Mirror's Edge does, we're going to start seeing some of these mechanics turning up in other products.
That I agree with.
And I think the whole idea of giving you a sense of you having a first-person game where you have some sense of your own physical form in the environment without it looking goofy. I mean, you brought up the Might and Magic game,
right?
Where when you kicked, it just looked ridiculous. And
the sword work really was fantastic in that game. I mean, I do think that Arcane Studios, and with what the early stuff they showed of what is it even called? The Crossing, if it's even still being made. But that likewise was very much about just the tangibility of yourself in the world, and whether you're using boomerangs and grappling hooks. And
you're totally forgetting the game what Chenny loved. Wasn't it
Breakdown? Breakdown with first-person vomiting, and Trespasser with its first-person health meter on your tit.
Condemned is also. I also think that Monolith are really excellent at sort of creating that sense of like physicality that you exist. I mean, when you punch people, when you get hit, when you roll downstairs, all that sort of shit.
But I think in physicality is that's what Mirror's Edge. Like everything you do is very physical, and you feel it, and that's what's neat.
So I've not played it. Awesome? Does it have like inertia? And are the physics like credible?
You feel as though if you run full speed at a wall, you'll put your hands and like slap your body against it, put your hands up to stop yourself from hitting.
You can really tell, like one thing they do, the way they manage the camera, even though it is first person, is like you really get that feel of like
so you feel like
moving
you are
into the wall and then
person around as opposed to
absolutely
controlling a camera that's running around.
And like wall running feels different than wall running in third person. Like you kind of feel.
And by feel, I mean it's very much a visual communication thing. It's really a visual communication thing.
About that like retrying thing, the one thing I was wondering about was like as soon as you're playing, you're like, oh, this is why Prince of Persia: Sands of Time had the ability to rewind, right? For the same reason that you're not redoing it. And then the other thing that Prince of Persia: Sands of Time did so well was it introduced this conceit that when you die, you've simply the equivalent of Scheherazade in the game is mistold her story. This is not how it was.
Yeah.
And because I was thinking about it, because of the world that Mirror's Edge is set in, they really don't have those options. And it's like, imagine if it's like, because sometimes when you're playing, it reminds me a lot of scenes in the Matrix series where you're, Neo's running from, what's his face?
Agent Smith,
yeah. And he's constantly like one step ahead of him. But like, I mean, if it was set in a world like that, then you can make these excuses, like some Matrix things where you're like rerunning scenes and stuff like that. But I mean, that's my one concern. I think a lot of people will experience the game with a lot of punctuation marks that maybe the writers hadn't anticipated.
I think it's a franchise game, or is it a one-off?
I'd love for it to be.
It'll be a franchise,
but maybe a franchise for the concept of runners and the environments, and maybe not for the character. I mean, this is something where you could build a world around it. Maybe because I think the world's the star.
And multiplayer. I mean, time trials is gonna be a big part of this game, but like multiplayer seems like a fun concept.
So is it more like the races in Crackdown kind of thing, where it's work your way from one point to the other?
I've heard it's like trying to shave a tenth of a second off your time, even like that kind of thing.
Wow. Somewhere right now, Andrew is listening and he's going, "God damn it, they're at an hour and they haven't even gotten to Shane yet."
Andrew,
I want to hear what Sean thinks of Wario Land.
I'll save my whole thing about the book recommendation until after you guys do yours, because I'll try to make that quick. But
did you play Wario Land Shake It?
I didn't get to. No,
had an awesome YouTube video.
It did have an awesome.
The YouTube video was really cool. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah,
that was pretty cool. Great marketing trick.
It looks
keep
great.
going, dude. Andrew's not here to say shit, so we're on our own.
Okay, well, I wanted to for my final podcast, my final line of blow. I wanted to recommend the book Proust Was a Neuroscientist, and it's basically but the writer was a neuroscientist, or I think he still is, and he also became a writer. And the entire time he was doing his research, he was reading Marcel Proust in Search of Lost Time. He's also a fan of Cezanne and Stravinsky and all these other artists. Very much a really well-grounded scientist who appreciates art and artists for what they are, not trying to say art is subservient to science or either or. But as he was doing his work, he was like, this is insane. There are so much parallels, and there's actually so much neuroscientific insight in this material that was written at the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century. So he started looking into that. But the whole book is basically organized in a series of chapters, and they might deal with Stravinsky or Virginia Woolf or all these different artists, visual painting, writers, musicians. And the whole time I'm reading it, he does such a fantastic job of both applying science to the art and then the art to the science. And I'm reading it, I'm like, God, I want to read writing about games like this, because it's not just atomizing the writer or the piece of music. And I'm going to be more specific now and say like the Stravinsky piece. I mean, now Stravinsky's a cliche. I mean, this was what was destined to happen. But the Rites of Spring, when it first came out, it was designed to basically confound every single expectation a concert-going audience could possibly have. And so, infamously, when it was first performed, it erupted in a riot. People in top hats and stuff beating the shit out of each other. One man hitting another, crushing his hat with a cane, beating him over the head, and people screaming and fighting because the music was just so fucking insane to them, you know. Now we can hear it, and it's like we hear it in a grocery store, and we're not going to start tipping over fucking Cheetos aisles and stuff, you know. I mean, we're like, but so what he's showing there is that he'll look and say there are very real reasons why this happened, and it was basically using elements of how the brain processes and reacts to music, even though he wasn't explicitly aware of it. There was no evidence or a way to prove it. But so what happens is he really appreciates both the work of art and then the science aspects is really illuminating. But when I was reading it, not only was I thinking this would be fantastic to, and I recommend it to everyone, would this be fantastic to see game writing of a similar sort, but looking at parallels, because like in Stravinsky's case, what happened is in music, in like a symphony or something, what happens is they have what's called a tonal triad, and you'll establish this at the beginning of a performance. So it's just a series of notes that you hear, and it sets up your expectations. And then the rest of the concert, what will happen is it will take and it will iterate on that a bit, but it won't give you the resolution of bringing it home until the very end. And the trick there is that, like, if you have something too predictable where that resolution comes too quickly, you have like bubblegum pop or something, where pardon me, it sounds great the first time you listen to it, and a week later you never want to hear it again. So what Stravinsky figured out was like, let's just like not give it to him. Like, actually, let's just get really close to suggesting we're going to resolve this, but then do something entirely different with it over and over again. And
which
what
is like
happened,
against the rules of classical music completely. Like,
right.
Yeah.
But by doing that, though, what happened is he ended up deconstructing classical music and showing people things about their expectations that they might not have been aware of. And I was thinking about, for one, in some level, like Mario even reminds me of, I mean, the way our brains respond to music and the way they respond to gameplay are totally different. But I think like pattern seeking is like a really important part of like human cognition and the way we think. And so like if you look at the original Super Mario Brothers, it's kind of symphonic in that when it starts off, it establishes like the tonal triad. It's like, this is what you can expect from each level. And then here's the princess in the castle, except you don't get it. And it's going to continue to delay that, and it iterates on it. And then when it ends, it's like, here's the equivalent of the tonal triad. The princess is in this castle, but we don't need any ending other than that, because it's more similar to music in its construction than it is a story or something. We don't really need to know anything other than like, there it is, right? But I think that idea, if you take an expectation, and gaming is all about expectations. We play them because we understand. We're all sharing certain assumptions about how they're made. And if you start to confound those in just the right way to fuck with people, you can get some really good rewards. You could both show people, make them aware of their expectations that they might not have been conscious of, but you can reap rewards. And an example would be like in Condemned, they teach you to look in lockers for ammo and weapons and stuff. And they make you comfortable doing that for the whole game. And then toward the end of the game, you open a locker and a freak comes out and tries to kill you. So that would be like a really simple, and that's an iteration on the treasure chest, right? Or the boxes in Resident Evil, whatever, a snake comes out, you know. And so just like imagining scenarios where like some other assumptions we have are if you're in a game world and it takes you a great deal of effort to get to a seemingly inaccessible place, like up high on a mountain or something. I mean, I was just playing the new Banjo-Kazooie game. It's the same thing. I grabbed the controller from Anthony. I was like, let me fly up to the top of this world. I bet there's Easter eggs up there. And like, sure enough, there they are. But what if you do that and then suddenly someone gets to that place and it's totally different? Then they get jacked somehow, or there's like a note that's like, sorry,
screw
like,
you, bitches.
I left you this or that. But there's tons of like different ways that, you know.
Sean wants to remix this shit and throw the break beats down in it.
I mean, you'd have to be careful. You don't want to like the equivalent of a gaming version of Stravinsky. You'd have to.
Has anyone done it?
No one would. People have messed with it, but no one would want to. I think it would be more likely to happen in a mod or in a game like a Jonathan Blow scale game or something, because who's going to put the budget on a game that's going to deliberately frustrate people?
It's not an exact parallel, but I mean the insanity effects in Eternal Darkness were pretty out there and meta and unexpected at the time.
And, Metal Gear's done stuff with
right, and Metal Gear as well.
Yeah,
well, there's Portal, and I mean to a certain degree, there's some stuff in Metal Gear Solid. But I think there's a difference between just surprising you with a variation.
And a whole game that's doing this over and over again. Say you come into a room and I'm going to make something off the top of my head. There's like a big elaborate Tomb Raider style puzzle, but then you need some certain like artifact or something to make progress, and that's just sitting there on the floor. So will people still solve the puzzle because they know it's there? And then if they do, what do? You have something come out and steal the artifact back and put it away.
Then you're programmed to think that the puzzle will reward you with something.
Yeah, because that's one of our assumptions. If we see a puzzle, we know we solve it because we're going to be rewarded.
Isn't it sort of also a function, though, of the sort of media that you have? For instance, I mean, this works very well in music, which is a short-form media. Even a symphony is still short-form media. This works very well in art. I mean, you can see any sort of discordal music.
Music and art are interpretive, and the vast majority of video games are very literal in what they're presenting you.
So I'm talking about,
the parallels just in that, like, there are certain notes when you might not even have an ear trained for music, and you can hear, just like when Stravinsky was practicing, this kid in his block would always come by and yell at his window, "That's not right. That's not right." It's just some schmuck-ass kid, right? But you get it. You still have a sense like this is a permissible move, or that's just wrong. That's when even when we're not trained, we know it's wrong. I think gaming's the same way, where you're like, even if you don't really think about it to the point where you can articulate what those assumptions are, you have them about how a game should function. And then when they do accidentally confound those assumptions, that's when they're fucked up and you get angry and you don't want to play it. That's what you feel like
in a dramatic endeavor. I think this would be very difficult to make work well. I mean, the same reason you would find it difficult to make it work in movies. There's some movies that have pulled it off.
Well, tons of movies are all about that.
I mean, what's interesting about 20th century composers, I mean, moving past Stravinsky and like getting into like what was happening in the 40s and 50s as orchestral music got so avant-garde and bizarre, and a lot of times it couldn't even really be realized. Like, these things would be written for like 7 different orchestras playing at the same time, and like it got so non-commercial. And I wonder if like 40 years from now in gaming, if people start going in this direction.
Well, what happened is no one goes to the orchestra anymore. I'm definitely not advocating this.
But modern orchestral music became unpalatable to the masses.
Exactly.
And like that could happen in gaming.
This is why I'm not saying this is not a normative statement I'm making. People need to do this, games need to be this, but I'm saying, what if there was the equivalent, an isolated instance? Right. Someone could do it in a mod or something.
I think you hit on. I think you're right there. I think a mod community is definitely because it's very experimental, and you have the freedom to like keep coming back and iterating on it.
I mean, with something like Little Big Planet, it allows anyone who has a crazy idea that twists to defy conventions.
Ironically, I think the technology has drawn people away from this, because if you go back to the Infocom and Scott Adams era, like text adventures and those early simple graphic adventures, they would do this shit all the time, where there'd be a long piece of prose describing a scene to you, and you'd spend a bunch of time sort of like poking away and just sort of trying to work what it had described to you and trying to find where the thing you were looking for was, and then it would end up having been like something that was right there in the description, and that was what you really needed. But again, because it wasn't literal and it was the way that it was serving up the information, as the technology gets better, what it's presenting is more literal, and it has to put it right in front of you, and it has to be you have to take what you're talking about kind of beyond just the visual or the physical, and it needs to be. It
could be interactive. Like I was saying, an example of like, say you're playing a game where it's trained you that every time you get some high up place, you're going to get a sniper rifle or a box of ammo, or in Half-Life you're going to get a crate with a rocket or something, that it reverses it and something horrible happens to you when you do that.
I would again argue that Kojima, more than a lot of people have pushed. I just thought about Metal Gear Solid 3 when you have to fake your own death and you go past the game over screen. Like that that definitely, it's like I haven't done that before.
Mm-hmm. Right. That challenges your assumptions about like how games end and
the rules of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Sanity meter in Eternal Darkness.
I brought it up, but that's this book sounds really interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's got tons of great stuff in it. The other thing that made me want to do was like there's this experiment where with wine testers, basically, all of us who sort of are suspicious of snobby critics can revel in this detail, where someone in France put together a wine tasting thing for like the most notable wine critics in the world. Took one white wine, split it up into 2 portions, and did food coloring to make it red, make it perfect, and had people test both the red and the white from the same vineyard. And of course, white and red wines are made from different types of grapes, taste very different, and not a single one knew the difference. They did another thing where they took a shitty wine, labeled it like a Grand Cru or something like that, and then like a table wine. Absolutely everyone was like, this is all these details about the texture and the taste and all this stuff for the one in the nice bottle, and how dumpy the
hints of raspberry and blackberry with a fruity note.
That kind of experimental mindset's great, and I hope Ryan Scott does this. He was mentioning that with reviews, he wants to sometime take a review that's coming out, have someone do the proper review, but then also have someone play it for 30 minutes and write a review based on that. Put it aside just for this novelty thing, and then compare that to the final one when the time comes. And then also I was suggesting have someone who hasn't played it at all write a review, but who's seen the previews, who's listened to the coverage online and all these things, and then put all three of those together.
Interesting.
And see how much variety there is in between. I mean, maybe there's a like Malcolm Gladwell would suggest in Blink, the person who played 30 minutes is going to be pretty similar to the person who played it for hours. And the reason to believe in this sort of thing is just that, like, another experiment, you could take 4 decks of cards and you make this game where every time you pull a card, it's got a face value on it. Like maybe you get $50 or minus 100 or something. And what they do is they make some of the decks very high risk but high reward. So you might be more likely to pull minus 1,000 or something. And so they test people, and eventually everyone realizes, and they start pulling from the minimal disc, the maximum, the best case scenario decks. But what's interesting is, well before anyone articulates what their strategy is, their physiological responses have already made it clear that they've arrived at a strategy. They're showing nervousness and anxiety, increased heartbeat and sweat when they're going for the high risk decks, like even a few minutes into the shit, So it's like, I mean, there's a lot of reason to think that people make up their minds well in advance to the point where they're able to articulate, what they think about it.
All right, I've made up my mind. We need to take a break because we could keep going like this for forever, I think. So let's take a break so we can get to 4-minute warning and the news still. All right, this is definitely going to be a long episode because we also have the coin, and I have no Andrew here to stop me from messing with the coin.
Oh.
Isn't that awesome? Don't worry, I won't do that to you. And we wanted to say real quick, yes, we're playing Little Big Planet. Yes, we're going to talk about Little Big Planet next week because it's something like, with the amount of time we've had to mess with it so far, probably not going to give you like very much detailed information that other than what you've heard already.
It's a big download, right? It's like 900 meg.
It's not nearly as big as it was when we downloaded it 2 months ago. But yeah, 900 megs isn't that bad. But in terms of the 1UP beta code giveaway,
right, which we have coming, 2,000 codes.
Keep your eye on 1UP. Could be happening Monday. Odds are you'll have to have already been a 1UP user. So if you try to, join the second we put them up, you're not going to get one. So
you don't think so?
I'm pretty sure you have to already be
How are you going to do it? Like a draw?
1UP user. Make
sure
you're a 1UP user and watch 1UP.
What is the contest?
What's the mechanic for it?
Just watch 1UP.
Meaning the contest hasn't been determined.
We guarantee the contest.
We have 2,000 codes and we have no idea. How
the contest won't involve you telling us what our favorite hobby is.
Oh, that's nice.
On that note, I'm told that you should all play a level that's basically it's like a machine version of Tetris, where this machine drops the Tetris pieces, but then it's also the same machine that's this bucket dumping the pieces has got like a wheel on it. And you know how like a music box works when you turn the crank in it?
Yeah.
But basically there's like a musical note attached to each cog, and as it passes around, it plays the Tetris theme like note by note. And I'm told that everyone
there's
should,
so many cool Rube Goldberg machines you can make with this with the construction kit. It's amazing.
I just started the beta 2 days ago, and I'm really surprised by the number of levels up there, and there's some really fun ones up there.
Oh, and speaking of betas, SOCOM.
I
have a code. I haven't downloaded it yet.
SOCOM.
1UP, yours is going to begin talking about SOCOM on a weekly basis, getting into it deeper than anyone ever anticipated. I mean, just really blowing this thing out.
All right, but now we're going to do 4-minute warning. All right, so let's do 4-minute warning. All right, first one up comes from Quacker Drill. He says, I've been reading the book Grand Theft Childhood as of late, and there is a chapter dealing with the accuracy of the ESRB. The authors discuss how many of the content descriptors are interchangeable and how the T and M ratings may actually be the other way around. In other words, there's no consequences for violence or humorous violence in T-rated games. So, how would you guys change the ESRB rating system? Any new descriptions or ratings, and what do you think about T-rated violence being worse than M-rated violence?
This is right up John's alley.
It's right up my alley. Yeah. So, I've read the book. I know the guys that wrote it. They took a lot of sense, but I didn't quite get where they were coming from on this, because M isn't always necessarily the notion of consequence is sort of completely separate from the notion of the content. What I think they do nail, and we've talked about it on this show before, is that the description for a T rating is essentially the same as the description for a PG-13 rating,
okay,
but they do not mean the same thing. And if there was a movie and a game with the exact same content and the movie got a PG-13, it would be M-rated.
But don't you feel that?
Yeah, that's very true.
Don't you feel that
if The Dark Knight was
right.
the exact same content was made as a video game, it would be M-rated.
But in the same way that PG-13 has gotten much harder in the last 10 years, like what you can put in it, much more mature. I think teen in the last 2 years has gotten harder. Like a game like Uncharted would have used to be mature. I really feel that way. Like it has animated blood. Like animated blood didn't used to be in teen-rated games.
So I think the issue is that it's inconsistent. T and E10 are inconsistent.
I think that's the crux of the matter.
And AO is useless as well.
Well,
Adults only doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, AO is the porn. There's only
that's
ever
a death
been,
warrant. I mean, you're not going to get your game
23
out.
games have ever had it.
I think we all wish that hard R could exist and be at retail for like a hard M. Yeah. It doesn't really exist.
So I mean, under the current structure, given the way that if either T needs to be established as consistently toughened up to be like Drake's Fortune, or there needs to be something between T and M.
It's too granular. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. What we're getting at is it's too granular right now, right?
I don't know about that. I mean, this is many. I mean, the ratings that are actually used, the two ratings that are very rarely used are AO and EC. I mean, games that used to. There was only ever.
What's EC? Oh, that's early childhood, right?
There was
okay.
one EC game on PS2.
One.
Ever.
Really?
One. It was
mudsliding.
No, Dora the Explorer and the Journey to the Purple Planet or something. It was called. It's the only EC game on PS2, and you would
Dora the Explorer goes to Walmart.
Yeah. But you would think that a platform like the PS2 would have a bunch of stuff that would go that broad and be
possibly sure.
But what happens is all the kid stuff just gets a blanket E rating, E for everyone.
So what about the descriptor words then? I mean,
there's 27 of them. It's a lot.
Too many, probably.
Well, you have violence, mild violence, intense violence, blood, intense blood. I can't remember what the adjective they add to blood is.
They have adult situations. That's a.
Well, there's also.
I made that one up.
There's recently there was an extra one like dropped in where they start to mix them up because they only have room for 5 of them in the box. So on
you can only have 5.
On GTA 4 had 6 or 7.
Graphic comic mischief.
Okay, well we still have a minute left. Then what's the fix? Stumped.
No, I mean I think given it's either toughen up T and establish T as really 13 plus like a PG-13, or there needs to be call it a T15 or whatever rating. There needs to be something that fills in that gap that accommodates the slightly more adult content that is not like super mature.
Doesn't PEGI have a 15? I think they do. Or does it?
In
Australia.
Europe, there's a 15 rating. Yeah.
Ratings? What do you think?
I don't think that's John's domain.
John's domain.
I'm in the single. I'm in I don't have kids. I'm 33 now. As of a couple weeks ago, it's like ratings. It's just not something I pay attention to. I'm sure it'll totally change.
And you really don't until you have someone that you sort of view them through.
You start playing games vicariously for other people.
But I think when we hear that things getting cut out of mature rated games that aren't offensive, that's when I get angry. I'm like, I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can talk about that.
All right, CMT2K2 says to all of you, in all the years you have all played and reviewed games, you've seen certain things improve in games, graphics, AI, story, character development, and at the same time you've seen some things get worse in situations. What do you think has been improved the most since you got into games, playing and reviewing, and what needs the most improvement that hasn't improved yet?
I tell you what needs the most improvement is scripting.
No, I think scripting is...
Wait a minute. Scripting, do you mean story writing or do you mean
scripted
specific
scenario?
Yeah.
I think scripted... No, it's story and vocabulary. I think it's still...
Because that's different than like what Shane's talking about.
Yeah, it's very inconsistent.
But I think, this question is like, since you started playing games, like, I remember 1979, and like, narrative in games has gotten immeasurably better, along with graphics and sound.
But not at the same rate that the other things that he lists.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good... If you look at the graph like this...
The amount of money and time and attention that's been put into graphics and AI...
That's true.
And sound.
The amount of money spent...
Right.
You're right. The amount of manpower and money spent on graphics and sound versus story.
And the attention is like, it hasn't evolved.
But that's also assuming, too, though, that games are naturally a storytelling medium.
But a lot of them,
which the jury's still out on.
But a lot of them have been positioned as a storytelling medium. And if you were to graph the improvements in, say, graphics and AI versus the improvements in the quality of the dialogue or the story, it's like really clumsy.
Like, and even the quality of the scenarios. I mean, like if you're not expecting it to be a game to be the equivalent of War and Peace, that just at least it's not going to be yet another version of Dungeons and Dragons,
right?
Or the Space Marine who saves the day, or what the American hero who preserves freedom, or whatever her options are.
We've told the same story several times. I mean, there's a lot of different types of stories that haven't been told.
Right.
But I think bitching about what isn't great in games, I think watching what's happened in my medium in the last 30 years is like astronomically impressive. To look at what happened like in music versus literature versus film.
The thing that gets talked about the least that's probably improved at least as much as great, I think, is sound.
Oh yeah,
like the quality of the sound in some games now is just mind blowing.
Like Wipeout HD. Oh my god,
Bioshock was another one that had phenomenal
and honestly,
sound.
it rarely gets mentioned. I mean, in a lot of reviews, I mean, it just gets glossed over.
Well, I think a lot of people
has got some of the best sound in games. Peggle. It's part of that positive reinforcement thing I was talking about. Seriously, if you play Peggle with the sound off, it's not the same game. I mean, that goes for everything, but I mean, really, like this Peggle is a game of sound.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
For cinematic sound, I think that part of it is that people will spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a flat screen TV and then throw a $200 theater in a box around it. And there's a great disparity there between the kind of fidelity.
Every now and then I'll play games with like a decent pair of headphones on, and it's like
shocking.
And you remember that, oh my god, the sound is so important, and you just gloss over it.
So we're talking about like some more creative design sides of it. There's some functional parts of games that I think haven't improved much. I mean, for instance, the controller of a video game still shares a whole hell of a lot with the controller of a video game from 10, 20 years ago.
I would completely disagree. I mean, look at
D-pads, buttons,
look at a balance board, Wiimotes, 6-axis. Things have gotten really way out there.
Those are a few innovations.
U-Force, Power Glove.
Those are a few innovations in the past couple of years. But if you compare, again, talk about the graph. How much improvement was there from 8-bit graphics to what we see today? How much in the sound, and then how much in the story writing? But in controllers and how we interface and interact with games, it's still very much holding something with two hands.
I would invite you to go play with an Atari 2600 joystick and tell me we haven't had amazing advances in controllers.
I would say obviously the switch to 3D graphics, I mean, not everything switched, but the introduction of 3D graphics has been huge, as physics are increasingly important to the extent that they've actually allowed many games that we think about to exist as we know them. Right. Yeah. I mean, from Boom Blocks to even, Half-Life 2 or something. But like I agree with Shane that things have actually, I mean, there's the glass half full version is that, I mean, I've been reviewing games for over 5 years now, and in that time, I wouldn't, when I first started EGM, I wouldn't imagine having been able to have the discussions I had about Metal Gear Solid 4 and, about Braid and a lot of these other games, about Bioshock at that point in time. I mean, and even every year, I remember, like, when Prince of Persia: Sands of Time came out, that was really, like, this struck me as phenomenal. But immediately before that, Eco. And they're, like, people are definitely doing things, I mean, when I think of the very best games, some of the most memorable games over this past 5 years, like, I think we're not making necessarily leaps and bounds, but we're getting someplace. I mean, we're definitely...
Coming up third, we have Karzak the Destro. Says, it's commonly held video game convention that a game must get more difficult as the player progresses further into it. 3 questions. Why do you think this is? Do you agree that it should always be the case? And if not, what would you change about that sort of system?
I mean, that idea has been around forever. I think it's usually right. I get pissed off when a game starts out really, really hard and then gets easy, or like there's a level near the end that's too easy. Like, that's the gradual slope.
That's a gradual slope is also an easy way out of introducing new elements. What happens is if you've got a one primary thing that's composing your game, how do you get mileage out of it? You make it more difficult and more difficult. But what if every aspect of the game was constantly different? It's familiar enough so that you're not disoriented every time you go, but it's just constantly something fresh. I think that I kind of prefer that option right now than something that just gets difficult. Of course, if we're talking about a game like a Peggle or something, it kind of makes sense. Right. Again, I think it's like almost closer to like music.
I mean, a lot of more narrative-based games nowadays, they will throw in parts where suddenly you're in a turret and it's really easy and fun and makes you feel like a god for a few minutes. And then a little more variety in it. But I think overall, when a game seems inconsistent, when it's instantly way too hard or suddenly really easy for no reason,
I think what happens a lot, particularly with action games lately, is that if they get the difficulty versus the sort of leveling up of your character right, towards the end, the payoff for all the hard work is that it gets a little bit easier,
Right.
because you've learned the idiosyncrasies of the game, and you're able to, okay, this character is wanting me to do this, and you can just start carving through them.
You want to feel like a god at the end.
Yeah.
And that's like a good, satisfying way to end, especially a long game where like I've been working. It's like if you ended the Matrix and like Neo was a pussy, you know, or like
I
Luke
hate it.
Skywalker was.
I hate it when the last boss is too easy. I hate it.
People did the same thing. What happened in Half-Life 2? It turned that tradition on its head, and it ended with you being like supremely powerful. And so many people just couldn't handle that. It pissed them off. It upset them because it was like, oh, the last level was a cakewalk. And I think that's an example of what I was saying about showing you what you assume.
Unlike most of the people who are at least around our floor, I'm not really into games for the difficulty of them. I mean, like Mega Man has really pointed.
I could not be bothered with Mega Man. It's too hard.
It has really pointed out to me
it's brutal.
that doesn't click for me. But there's a whole group of people that it really does click for.
It's a really old school thing, and this is tied in with like the whole notion of the death mechanic. You know, the fact that Mirror's Edge is using a really old gameplay mechanic, which is you get it wrong, you die, you go back, you try it again, and it's like a very archaic game design thing. And in that case,
the whole notion of the death in the games was there to make money, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, for all of its flaws, I was really into like what Sin Episodes was trying to do, was like endeavoring to do with its, a dynamic difficulty adjustment that would keep the game playing to my play, so that just keeps the gameplay working. I think a lot of this is also born from games where the designer wants to teach you a mechanic, and then once they teach you the mechanic, repeat it a few times where you get it down, teach you the next mechanic, and so you're kind of layering all these mechanics so you get to the end of the game, and suddenly you pull it all together into some kind of gaming casserole that's wonderful and delicious.
Isn't it also somewhat born from sports? Like when you play a sport and you work through a league, doesn't it by definition get more challenging because you're playing against other people that are better?
Yeah, but at the same time, you're developing skills such that as you play further and further into the game, if you get good at it, you continue to get better, and the competition gets more on the level playing
It also
field.
assumes that the primary reason for playing a game is challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case anymore.
It's not for me. I mean, it's definitely not for me, which is why, again, back to the Mega Man 9 analogy, is like that's why it doesn't click for me.
I think it really changed in the 90s when the idea was like every home game is a game you can buy and beat and finish. Like a Tomb Raider has unlimited continues. You can see the whole game. Like back in the 80s, there's a lot of games you're like, I'm never going to beat this game ever. You know?
Well, and the One Up FM guys doing Indigo Prophecy. I mean, that game, Indigo Prophecy, does not get harder. I mean, you're playing along with you're experiencing the story, but I don't think the challenge really ratchets up.
No, I don't think so. I mean, they throw in a couple of disparate game types that kind of don't work to different.
Right.
There's a couple pieces that really don't work well. But I agree with what Sean was saying, which is I want a game that instead of making it harder or whatever at me, just gives me different experiences, keeps the game going, and it's like a rich world like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, like imagine like if all novels ended and they were the most like difficult to read or just like conceptually challenging in the final chapters, or like every album ended with like the equivalent of the Beatles' Number 9, or.
I think that's a great spot right there. All right, I also pulled a couple of questions off my Twitter feed, and people asked some great questions, so I actually added a couple in for this. So the first one is from Ralph Lee. He says, subscription MMOs are growing. Is this good or bad for regular games? E.g., are WoW gamers spending less on other games?
I think they're probably spending less time on other games.
Yeah, I mean, isn't WoW like the fastest growing MMO ever now?
500,000 people in the first week signed up for...
$12 a month.
Warhammer.
They're not going to be spending
Online.
they're going to be playing War as opposed to playing anything else.
How many of them are the same people who would be buying those other games, though?
See, that's... they're broadening the market. It's weird. They're broadening the market in a really narrow way. You're going out, it's like one single tendril of a type of person that it's like, okay, I'm going to try this one. But that's going to be my game.
It's the ultimate business model for games. I mean, it really is.
I will also say, though, that I know just as many people, like, I mean, John, you're probably imagining someone who, if the option is they don't play any games or they play just WoW. Mm-hmm. So it's not broadening the market. But we know tons of people who play WoW, and it's like, it occupies its own space. It's like, what games are you playing this week? You don't even mention that because it's just there. So it's like, say if you were like addicted to like Cheers or something, and you watched all these other shows too, but it was just like everyone in the world watch. I mean, that's a bad example, like MASH or something. Assuming people watch it because it's on TV anytime you fucking turn it on, even 30 years later. But
American Idol.
It's just something. It's just there.
It's its own hobby outside of games.
Yeah, you could just assume they also play that. I mean, that's how it was with Jeff and Ryan and Sean Malloy and everyone.
Damien,
Damien and Luke. And
I think for me, having played WoW and been into WoW for a while, but then realizing that I wasn't playing the games that I wanted to play, I think there's definitely a distinction between people who want to play different sorts of games. And it probably applies not just to like MMOs, but because people are playing Peggle doesn't mean that those people who are playing Peggle aren't going to play something else. It means that they're playing Peggle because that's what they're disposed to play, and that's what they...
I think it's age dependent as well, because as older people, we have... Like, all entertainment is competing for our available free time.
And we have less and less of it.
And we have less
and
less of it. So when you go home, are you going to play WoW? Are you going to play Mirror's Edge? Are you going to play Peggle? Or are you going to watch The Wire? I mean, they're all... all of them I could spend an hour doing, but which one do I want to do right now?
And that's totally true, especially for me with multiplayer games, because it's not only I can be playing something else, but I have people that are sitting there in Ventrilo or on Xbox Live reminding me that I could be playing those other things with them. Mm-hmm. So, for a while, it was a standard. If you make a shooter, a first-person shooter, it has a multiplayer mode in it, and more people did it. But now we have reviewers getting games, and they're trying to play them for multiplayer sessions even after they've come out, and there's like one person on there doing it, and it's like, I think that they do definitely vie for time with one another. I mean, that's why I play Company Heroes all the time. And if I'm going to go and play something else, it's got to be better than the experience I can have with my friends with that. So I guess that goes for people in WoW.
Yeah.
The next one comes up from Shumon, S-U-H-M-A-W. He says, with mainstream gaming proving so much success for Nintendo, will next generation be all about the mainstream gamer and have hardcore gamers take a back seat, or will it phase out and revert back to the hardcore gamer for all or which platform?
Who cares?
Well, I mean, we've talked about...
All right, with X, we'll just put an X
I think it's worth talking about. I think on this podcast we've talked about how Microsoft wants to transition 360 to casuals, and that's a really smart move. And I think Sony's trying to get everybody on everything, which is harder.
Do you think Microsoft wants to transition it or just incorporate it into what they do?
I think the hang-up I think that hardcore gamers have about this is there's this concern they're going to get left behind. And it's not. It's just adding on.
Well, the question I didn't include, but it kind of goes along with this, was another great question we had was, will Nintendo's disregard, or that's obviously from a Nintendo fan, but feeling like disregard for the hardcore fans ever come back and bite them?
No.
Change the terms of this question to after the introduction of Sesame Street or the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
Did this mean that Hill Street Blues will never appear again, and the people in 2008 will not be watching a show called The Wire or whatever, and they'll be watching?
That's perfect.
All right, we solved that one quickly. The next one comes off also off my Twitter feed. This is from LD Moody. He says, do you think a gaming platform can survive without a signature series or signature mascot?
Yes.
PS3 seems to be doing okay.
I mean,
can fucking TV exist without can the Olympics exist without a mascot?
Olympics always have mascots.
Olympics does always have mascots.
They always have mascots. I mean, they had
those 5 things for Beijing.
We didn't even know what they were, though, man.
Right. Izzy,
did
this
question come through a time warp from 1995?
But it's funny, looking back on platforms throughout history, most of the successful ones do have either a mascot or a defining franchise. And even some of them who, like Bonk, he was a mascot for TurboGrafx, didn't really help. It's like, just because you have a mascot doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work.
You can really make that argument. How much did Halo buoy Xbox One?
100%. I mean, if Halo didn't exist, it all would have gone differently. In the same way we say PS3 is kind of struggling to find its mascot. Maybe
but is that a killer? Is it a killer app or is it a mascot?
That's what kind of changed, because Master Chief isn't a mascot.
I mean, he is to a lot of people. You could argue that.
I understand that. Coming back to your previous example, it's more now like, would HBO have been HBO without The Sopranos? Would Showtime be Showtime without Weeds? I mean, there needs to be I guess that signature series. There's a franchise element to it. There needs to be the big star, but I don't think it needs to be. I think we just need to lop off the end of his question. The mascot part of it is not the important thing
killer
anymore.
App that you can only get in that you associate with that brand.
But the success of Wii isn't on the back of Mario, which is kind of what's stunning about it, really.
It's on the back of, I guess, the controller.
Wii Sports.
And Wii Sports.
The controller, yeah.
Just dumpy-looking little people that consist of a circle and an oval.
I mean, and Mario is like the Uber, like the mascot, and it just goes to show you that maybe mascots aren't the most important thing anymore.
No. I think we did that one, huh?
We did do that one. Well, we're way ahead now. All right. Red Swirl manages to get in here again. He does a pretty good job of getting in here. He always asks some good stuff.
Is it an otaku-flavored question? I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to guess.
Did you read it yet?
No.
Yes.
But if it's Red
very.
Squirrel, though.
Yes, it is.
Shock and awe right there,
Right.
baby. When do you think we'll start to see more Japanese exclusives show up on the PS3? TGS are ever looking back, one of the biggest reasons that you probably bought a PlayStation is because there were all the Japanese console exclusives went. Looking at the PS3's exclusive lineup today, though it's had to rely on American stuff like Resistance, Uncharted, Wipeout, Ratchet, and Warhawk. No offense to those games, but they don't really stand out from the Xbox Windows titles like Halo, Gears, and Mass Effect quite the way Japanese games do. And also more bizarre is the Japanese role-playing games going to the Xbox platform. So
if Sony Computer Entertainment of Japan knows what's good for them, at TGS in a week and a half, they're going to announce a bunch of new exclusives. And just this week, I mean, Yoshida, he was blaming Japanese third parties. He's like, "Oh, you guys aren't making enough games," but they're just waiting in the wings to see. You know, they feel that it's not a worthwhile investment yet, and they're getting all these great co-development deals from Microsoft. So Sony's just kind of put themselves in this position, and they're the ones who have to fix it.
Well, I think you pointed out two elements right there that really bring it out. First of all, is it not being worthwhile, and second of all, is the money that Microsoft continues to pump into those co-development deals. I mean, that's why Final Fantasy 13 is going to I on the platform.
Right.
Clearly,
But I mean, you know, we've seen 2 weeks in a row now where 360 is outselling PS3 in Japan because of Vesperia and Infinite Undiscovery, and yeah, like.
Don't tell me the plan's working.
It is working. And like now you hear, well, Sony might not show the new Team Ico game at TGS. I'm like, really? You really should.
Also, why would a country decide when they know the majority of their market is throughout the entire world and not just within their own boundaries? Why would they just say we're just going to make software for this one platform any more than like an American studio would say we're only going to do a PS3 game or a 360 game? I mean, they want to hedge their bets as well. I mean, so you got like Resident Evil 4. I mean, all these like games that are.
Well, you definitely see it amongst third parties, and I mean, there's always been the feeling, at least through journalists, that Sony has not held out the same sort of third-party support to developers, whether it be financial or technical or whatever.
They would just leverage their relationships and be like, well, you know who we are, but Microsoft's actually giving them money, and you can't say no to money.
On the JRPG thing, I'm actually kind of shocked that they are still essentially the same as they were.
Mm-hmm.
What I hope happens at TGS is that as part of Sony's
you mean the genre itself?
Yeah,
or?
I think it's kind of like it's kind of like reading the same kind of book over and over. They're very comfortable because Blue Dragon and all of the recent ones they've not really pushed the needle a long way. They're very comfortable.
It's because of Final Fantasy. I mean, this whole Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, but Dragon Quest is so traditional that it never really changes anything. Whereas like. The whole JRPG industry always waits to see what Final Fantasy does in copies.
Yeah.
You know what?
Always.
I won't argue if someone says that I'm gullible and that I want to believe, but like all of the talk about White Knight's story.
I was just going to bring that up. White Knight could be the one that breaks the mold a little bit.
I'm buying. I mean, I'm going to keep buying into it, and maybe all the way to my death, but that's fine.
It didn't impress TGS last year. It looks better now, but we'll see.
There's this other assumption in here that's, I mean, it's kind of like Sony's a Japanese company, so that should be the home for the Japanese games. But I wasn't asked like. I think is that one of the reasons why some people prefer Sony? I mean, like Shane, like a lot of people have asked, like, Shane's a Sony fanboy or something, and my guess was like, that's not the case, and then other people would argue that and they'd be like, no, he likes Wii and stuff. But for me, it was like, it's changed over the years, but I do believe you were always partial to Japanese-based games, and I know you were a huge Sega fan at one point.
I started out
when they went under. And at that time, Sony was like, they were kind of the American machine and the Japanese one, but then that became, this is the Japanese machine.
It was when Square Enix moved to PlayStation and made a lot of games, that's when I became a PlayStation fan because I like Final Fantasy, I like Japanese RPGs, and that's where a lot of them are. Now a lot of them are on 360, but the bad thing is until Final Fantasy 13 comes out, they're all the B-level games. And the B-level games are still cool and they're fun to play and I like them, but... once again...
Is it that sad that every Japanese RPG, every game in the genre from this country has to suck until they can follow the lead of Square Enix?
It's pretty unique in that way, yeah. It's like they really don't know what they're doing until Square Enix shows them.
And then you get a bunch of copies.
Yeah.
All right, wow. All the way to the end. The last one comes also off of Twitter. This one's from OK Samurai. This is, will Mario... Resident Evil and Final Fantasy include make-your-own game creation tools one day. Is that the next logical evolution?
I could see Mario, maybe. Not the others.
Why not? Why would you see Mario and not the others? I mean, come on, you got to give more explanation than that.
Well,
you can't leave it out
Mario's a platformer.
Okay.
And we have a template for
Mario is more in a platform. Mario is anything.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like the easiest
Mario
thing.
Paint is a make-your-own Mario, but like the idea of, I think he's talking about like a make-your-own Mario level game. I can see that happening, but like make-your-own Resident Evil or Final Fantasy, that's a little ambitious. I mean, you already have RPG Maker, and you can make your own like low-rent Final Fantasy if you really want, but I think it's not in Square Enix business model to
I
make.
could see maybe something in the Resident Evil vein, building maps and dropping things in for behaviors and making environments. But an RPG, there's so many rules, and you need to sit down. It's not like Little Big Planet where you can go, I'm going to grab a bunch of cute stuff and slot it together and make something work. You need vision to do a Final Fantasy, really.
But let's not say everything has to be Little Big Planet. Spores shared content is basically...
But what they share is that...
Content is just like unit creation.
Yeah, but the mechanics are really simple.
Right. So I can imagine, though, like some kind of cool Resident Evil where you were mutating different...
like a zombie maker?
Yeah, like some kind of cool... you're making different mutated genotypes and like sharing them across, and they're like infecting other people's genes.
But like, do you think you could make... But like this guy's asking, do you think you could make your own Resident Evil? Like, no, I don't think that. I don't think you could make a Resident Evil.
Even that monster scenario, it's like you're going to a horror movie where you can't be scared by the monsters because you've created them.
Right.
Okay, I don't think... I didn't take the question to mean that. I take the question to mean more like, will it have user-generated content
I could see them do, if they ever did Resident Evil Online properly, that if it was drawing from a pool of user-generated zombies that you were up against, so you never saw the same thing twice, I could see that.
Yeah.
But I think creating the entire... game. I think we're going to see more and more build and share small pieces. Definitely.
It won't be story-based games. I mean, that's the other thing about Final Fantasy, especially, is it's very narrative-driven. Like this template fits very well into any sort of game.
But
where
maybe even like user-generated outfits or weapons, or you build a cool sword in Final Fantasy, and it has to adhere to some certain rules, and you can go. You see the non-player characters wielding these like user-generated weapons or something.
I think if Little Big Planet's huge, that Microsoft will make its own version of it.
Well, I mean, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts has elements of it already, but
yeah, it's not the same game at all.
I think individual elements rather than entire games.
Right. Well, because it takes so much more to create a game. I mean, you have to build a game. You have to almost purpose make a game like Little Big Planet to make games with the game.
Well, and I think part of the appeal of Little Big Planet is it has its own new aesthetic. Like, you haven't seen these things before.
Right.
Everything you see is fresh. Whereas, like, if it's like, oh, here's a bunch of Mario things I've already seen that I can remix and my mushroom's over here.
But if it was like like an action RPG, and the first thing the game did is, okay, you got to like create your own version of a few things before you can start the game. And then the first thing it does is it drops those into the central database so that other people playing the game see that weapon, see that armor, see that... I mean, it's mechanics that are already in games. The only thing missing really is the sharing. I think what Spore and Little Big Planet will encourage is that now our game has user-generated content, so we have that little box checked for when we announce the next version of this game.
Genitalia for every game.
Yeah, well, there'll be some that lazily do it, but they're definitely, I think, that the big upshot out of Spore will be that idea of content propagating from my game to your game and changing the environment, and that propagating to Sean's game, and then not coming back to my game, and it all sort of like creating a different sort of emergence, not emergent gameplay, like just emergent design.
Stuff.
Emergent stuff. All right, there we go. We've reached the end of 4-minute warning. What do you think? We should go on and do news? We'll go on and do news. Stick around. We'll be right back with the news. All right, we're here ready to jump into the news segment. It starts off with our old friend lawyer, or once you're disbarred, do you still get to call yourself a lawyer?
Nope.
All right, so he's now just Mr. Jack Thompson because he has been officially disbarred, and interestingly enough, the judge followed through on the recommendation that says no recourse. It was a disbarment without opportunity to apply for readmission to the bar.
Gaming news sites should all be pouring one out for him, because what are you going to do on a slow news day when you need to like meet your quota for stories going up? Like
no
Thompson,
no wacky lawyer stories anymore.
He was always there to like fill in those lean months.
He can now become like a consumer advocate. I think we're still going to hear his obnoxious nonsense.
Oh, you're still going to hear his obnoxious nonsense because he immediately fired back with a press release that included, here he talked about how he'd been doing this for 20 years, etc. He says, it appears that the state of Florida will be paying Thompson more damages this time around for its illegal and now repeated use of discipline to punish a Christian lawyer for his activism in the public square.
For his Activision?
Yes.
I like how he made it like a religious war.
Yeah.
Good job.
The rest is it's so pretentious. The timing of this disbarment transparently reveals its motivation. This past Friday, Thompson filed a federal civil rights action against the bar, the Supreme Court, and 7 of its justices. Which, if you like, Kotaku had the actual court document. The list of defendants was over one whole scroll bar on the page. Everybody and their brother.
Can we deport him to Finland where he can blame that school shooting on GTA?
I'll sue you comes out of that guy's mouth like the F word comes out of someone with Tourette syndrome. He stubs his toe and he threatens to sue the couch or something.
I don't know. I think you're kind of right. The only thing I have to wonder is if he's sort of just become a parody of his own self, just because he's been doing this for so long. If you go back to when he was doing it against Music, 2 Live Crew, and all that kind of stuff.
And he was able to do it because, let's face it, he had an audience. Because he would say stuff and everyone would write about it.
Well, disbarred, I think that actually might sort of diminish his viability with the news outlets,
right?
He
doesn't have the the point that I can't remember who made. Yeah, it was the Game Politics was that he's not going to have the regular gig on Fox News anymore,
right?
Because who wants the disbarred lawyer being the guy saying that he's disgraced.
We've known he's a joke forever, but now the general populace won't be hopefully get the same access to him.
He needs a variety act at casinos.
That would be awesome.
Non-Vegas variety.
All right. No laughing matter, though, has been the economic crisis over the past couple of weeks. It's deepened quite a bit, and I was, I follow the financial markets quite a bit. I was interested to see what some of the analysts thought, and of course, Michael Pachter, who's been very accessible to us. Some people say that he's, ulteriorly motivated by that. Regardless, he's a very often sought video game financial analyst. I talked to him about the effects that the economic meltdown might have on the video game business, both short-term and long-term, on games that are needing funding down the road. And he pointed out a couple of things. The primary one was that most of the big publishing companies right now are in good cash positions, so they're not in a situation where they're going to have to go out and borrow a bunch of money or make stock releases in order to finance their ongoing development efforts.
Except for Midway.
They
borrowed a huge amount of money from their CEO in order to publish Blitz and Mortal Kombat this fall.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did.
That's interesting. That must be the private placement that he spoke of, because private placement means that the debt was placed with an individual. In this case, it was back to the CEO. That's interesting.
That's interesting.
He also pointed out that he also said that after the stalled negotiations between EA and Take-Two, that he doesn't see a lot more additional consolidation in the marketplace. That deal not going through sort of gives him a sense that maybe that mid-level publisher is in a spot where they can maintain themselves.
I know. I still think there's some stuff needs to shake out.
What this means, as my friend said, is that you'll be playing Guitar Hero 15 from Hooverville. You should be comfortable with that.
From Hooverville. All right. If you've been feeling the financial crush and you haven't bought a PS3 yet, this weekend might be your opportunity. Blockbuster, according to a report on Kotaku, is going to be pulling the price down on the 40-gig discontinued model. You can pick it up, according to the copied sheet that was on Kotaku, for $299.99. $300. You get yourself a PS3.
That's a good deal.
That is a good deal.
I think back to the Pachter point, something that we learned after 9/11 actually was that during crisis, people do go into nesting mode, and video games are uniquely compatible with that because they give you, for $50, you get an awful lot of things you can sit in your living room in the safety of your own home and
so this is a whole other side of the economic downturn, but that's very true. During the Depression, the movie business, caught fire because
people want escapism from reality.
The ultimate staycation.
Yeah.
Well, that's number one. And then, that's a very good point. Staycation's a great word for it, because while you might not be able to afford a trip someplace, you might not be able to afford a new car or washer and dryer, you can go out and buy a movie ticket, you can go out and buy a video game.
Sorry, I look at Shane. I'm like, I nodded. Shane just nodding like,
yep,
this is true right here.
This is all true.
Staycation.
It's interesting. Another one of the good questions that was in the 4-minute warning thread was whether or not video games would experience this generation, if there was a big recession, whether they would be the big entertainment winner of this generation of that sort of movement. Would the money go into video games?
Every time there's been anything sort of really major happening, they've been very strong.
I don't know. There was no internet porn in 1939.
Somewhere in the back of your mind,
That's
though,
true.
There isn't a little person from Idaho or someplace that's like, imagine a Great Depression on a global scale with today's massively intertwined international economic system. and how every time in the past this has happened, it's been followed by some massive war. I mean, there's not some part of you that's like, I mean, that's the rose-tinted glasses. I mean, we're going to be eating our belts in like
can we just
a year from now.
Can we like just give Alaska to China if we default on our debts?
Like the road.
I'm just curious.
The road by Cormac McCarthy is going to be reality.
And does it come with a Palin?
Yeah.
If you do pick up a PS3, you might hopefully have another platform if you're interested in playing Team Fortress 2 a lot. Because in an interview that we had with Gabe Newell, he talked about how they don't have any. Actually, this was Doug Lombardi who gave this quote, but they said they don't have any PlayStation developers, so there's absolutely no internal Valve development going on around any of the Orange Box products, and that includes all the add-on content that's out on PC, which is going to be packaged up at some point. Already confirmed that it's coming to the 360.
So is that just reflective that no one's been playing the online versions of Team Fortress on PS3? It must be, right?
I think it goes beyond that, though. They've expressed they don't like that hardware. They don't like developing for the hardware. It's a pain in the ass, and it's like so much extra work.
I mean, they said, Newell said that we don't have the bandwidth for the Orange Box. EA did the PS3 version, so this is the thing. I think if you have the PS3 version, you want to hold out hope. If enough of that user base gets interested, EA might just go back to whoever did the porting work or to another of their studios and say, okay, port over all the extra content now because we want it on PS3, right? I mean, there's no reason they couldn't do it.
It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, too, though, right? Like, I mean, for hardcore people that have a choice, it's like which one to get on. We'll get on 360 because you're going to get post-release support there, or especially in the case of PC, that's the number one choice. And then it's like, hey, not many people bought it on PS3. Why should we make a PS3 version?
Yeah, I think the only thing that would encourage EA to do that if there was a surge in like PS3 online games of TF2.
The other thing you have to be concerned about is, they've said that they weren't going to do Left 4 Dead PS3 now. But I mean, the longer this goes on... But
they said that EA could.
They said EA could. Yeah. I think that the longer this goes on, the more... I agree with what Sean said. I don't think that they're very keen to develop on PS3 at all. So
Gabe Newell has just repeatedly made it clear that it's not his favorite architecture to design for.
Right.
A couple of features so we talked about the Little Big Planet beta. One feature that people have talked about won't be in the release version but will be in subsequent downloadable content is the ability to do that creation mode collaboratively online. Now you will be able to collaborate when the game comes out with 4 controllers around the same box, but we won't be able to all hop on at our homes and play over PSN.
Well, you can all play. You just can't edit.
I'm sorry, we won't be able to edit and create at the time it releases. This came from Sam Protagonist, who's the Sony side community manager for Little Big Planet over on the official forums. The good news, and I think some of the stuff he hints at, is that they already have a plan in place for future content and updates to Little Big Planet. I mean, I think.
Well, I think this is a little disappointing. I hope that it comes within the first 3 months. But as someone who's played a lot of the game, there's actually a reason for it, because when you play with other people and you edit with other people, if they come into your game and they haven't played with everything that you've played with, if they haven't tried every possible tool, every possible thing you can do, when they go to do that, everybody has to sit through a tutorial while you watch them learn how to do it.
Oh, this is what you're talking about, where every time you open anything new.
So even if you're playing locally, so like you invite your friends over to your house and they jump in and they have new characters on the Big Planet who've never played before, and you've done everything.
Well, it's like Legos then. You don't invite your sister in to come play with you. You get your hardcore friend and then you make the Death Star or whatever together. Like you don't.
Yeah, so it's a little bit obnoxious because everybody has to get up to the same speed and the same level of experience before you can really do it together. So this way, 3 months in, at least people who've been playing the game, they'll all be instantly ready to play together and create together.
And just to be clear, he didn't say it would be 3 months. He said it would be
hopefully within the first 6 months. Jesus.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, so what you're saying is you buy into sort of the explanation he made. We don't have it in the story, but I read over on the site is he made this explanation that on top of everything else, it doesn't work out badly because what will happen is people will get to learn how to do create before they start doing it in this online arena. So you buy into that?
Yeah, I mean, they just better follow through and actually deliver it.
All right. Have you checked out, Shane, or anybody, has anyone checked out the video download service on the PlayStation Network that was such a big deal people got excited about?
I mean, I've looked at it. I haven't actually purchased any of the films from it, but I know that people are are getting a little upset because you can only download it 3 times, right?
Well, no, you can only
2
download
times.
it one time.
One time.
You can download it one time.
You can copy it though.
So the story that we read, that we saw, it was over on Ars Technica, where they get into a little more of the tech side sort of stuff. I haven't actually done the video content marketplace. They spoke to the PlayStation Network Media Relations Manager Lincoln Davis, who told them that customer service can issue a re-download as a one-time courtesy, as provided by our guidelines, for the title to allow consumers to go back and download the movie from their PSN download list. That's one time as a customer service thing. But basically, once you download a video, that's it. I mean, you've downloaded the video.
How much do they charge for the download?
What do they run like nine?
Different,
I don't. Honestly,
prices,
I don't know. I haven't.
prices.
I mean, if it's cheaper, if it's like significantly cheaper to reflect the fact that you aren't really getting ownership of it in the way that you would with the Steam game.
10, 12, 14 bucks, I think.
But I know when you download it, you have the ability
for high def.
For high def.
For high def is like 14,
there's
15 bucks.
SD, there's TV stuff. But I know when you download anything, you do have the ability to put it on your PSP as well.
But dude, this is the stuff that people are like filing a class action lawsuit against Spore for, and in Spore you get 3, and not only that, if you call them, you get more, and there's no like cap on it. It's like you just have to keep calling them. And here, those same people should be going insane. Like you get one version and that's it.
Yeah, I mean the single download here is a mess. I mean, think about it. Like movies take up a fair amount of space, especially a high def movie.
But
right?
it does raise the question of moving forward into like a digital download society. Do we expect every single transaction we make from now until the end of time to be recorded in like 30 years from now? I'd be like, well, I bought that WiiWare game in 2005.
Wait, did you buy the damn thing or did you rent it? Because that's the difference.
You bought the
one-time download
license agreement.
See, I think this is bullshit because the whole idea is that you have a 60 gig hard drive or a 120 gig hard drive in your machine, but they've got this thing sitting up at the server. Once they've authorized it, I mean, I can totally understand authorizing it to a machine, but only authorizing a single download is absurd. What if you're active, if you're a really active video downloader, why should you have to sit there and clog your hard drive up with all these movies?
And it shouldn't be tied to a machine. It should be tied to an account.
Okay, so
it should
even
be
better,
if
right?
I log in as me on a box and I've bought The Matrix.
Yeah, if you can only have
I should
one
be able to
active.
go get it without having to pay for it again.
I mean, this is an issue facing the transition.
I can go out and buy a DVD, play it at home, take it out, come to your house and play it on your DVD player.
Right.
Why can't I do that with the digital equivalent?
I think it talks in like what
even easier. You should be able to even easier because you should be able to reach out and grab it.
How people relate to non-physical purchases and non-physical things, and like moving forward, how do we feel about this? And do you think that? I asked that question. Like 20 years from now, do you want the ability to be like, hey, I bought that 20 years ago. I should be able to get it again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you what, Best Buy is probably singing all the way to the cash register because it makes it more and more. They just go buy the Blu-ray. I can buy the Blu-ray and keep it as long as I want. Don't have to worry about it. And you know what? 15 years from now, I bought the Blu-ray. I didn't rent it. I bought it.
And it's like, look, here it is.
In order to get past like some of the stumbles they're having right now, they've got to get over that idea.
15 years from now, you're not going to want to watch a Blu-ray.
Well, okay,
that's true. I mean, like think about your VHSs that you got now. Dude, I got Batman Returns on VHS, man. I'm glad I didn't get the digital version of that.
It's true.
It's sitting on my shelf where it belongs.
And you know what? You're probably right. 15 years from now, you're probably not going to want to watch a 1080p version of.
Well, this is. I mean, it's sort of tied. It's like the first time that we've actually seen the process of we're going to keep re-releasing this on every new format that comes along, and digital is different. So, we put it out on VHS, we'll put it out on DVD, we'll put it out on Blu-ray. We got you to buy it 3 times. Well, on digital, how do we get you to buy it 3 times? Well, we just don't really sell it to you.
Well, it also continue to increase the fidelity and other things, like the difference between Blu-ray and DVD.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, do you think I have bought the ability to carry all these bytes of data with me for all time, but if I don't want to carry them, then I should be able to get them from you again whenever I want.
Mm-hmm. But I think, the resolution on movies is going
Are you saying that you don't agree with that?
I don't know. I think moving forward, as everything we buy media-wise has no physical component, like, I don't know if I expect a magical computer in the sky to keep track of everything I bought.
It's not.
I don't know.
Why is that so hard? If they're offering a item for sale, it means it's sitting somewhere in their data banks.
Right.
Why should you not be able to access it? It's not like they're paying for the bandwidth for you to get that download.
So to take Shane's argument, if that is the case, and that seems to be the way that a lot of them are treating it,
right,
they shouldn't be charging us basically the same as they're charging us to buy the DVD.
Right. That was my
absolutely not.
Yeah.
So if we're
like
not
buying, if you have nothing to show for it,
if I'm not buying anything physical and I end up with it
rental.
expiring, then you need to let me have it for less than the physical thing that I can keep forever. Technically,
it's it's temporary ownership in this new category in between rental and owning.
There has to be an impetus, the reason to not have the physical thing. Like, it has to be. Now
that would temper this argument a whole lot, wouldn't it?
Like I'd buy if I bought a movie for $5 and it evaporated at some point,
Big whoop.
you'd probably be like, whatever.
Remember the DVDs that Blockbuster had where they like exploded after 3 days or like collapsed or
They
something?
were DivX DVDs did that. They had a limited time on it.
Yeah, like the data structure deteriorated or whatever. All right. Mark McDonald went to a
Any
little...
porn's made of that material.
It's like, oh, she's coming in.
You press a button. There's like an extra button on the player. Ain't nothing in there, honey.
Some dust.
Whole new meaning to money shot. Mark McDonald was at a level 5 press conference that was today. Was on Friday, but we got it on the information on Thursday. They unveiled
like 7 new things.
Five new things, and we talked about a bunch of information. The thing to me that stood out.
Well, we haven't talked about most of the things they announced. I mean, like most of them are things you've never heard of.
But they're on. I mean, we have them up on the news site.
I think the most exciting one, there's a DS game which is done with Studio Ghibli, the guys who did Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke, and it looks really cool. RPG. Yeah.
And you also have Professor Layton coming back.
Big whoop.
Oh, cool. Oh, Professor Layton.
I like Professor Layton too, so we got you outnumbered here. But the funny thing to me was the
Level
whole.
5 did Dark Cloud, right?
They did.
They ever going to return to that? Have they ever talked about it?
People have said there's a chance, but right now they've got their hands full with like 10 other games.
Yeah.
And their own new virtual console.
Exactly. They have a console that transforms into a robot. This is your little Transformer robot guide, and it's your Transformer robot guide for their new service called Roid.
Roid is it's an acronym. Well, so what it is,
but it sounds awesome
Pirated
because
NES
it's
games.
Roid.
No, it plays like their games.
It's basically it's somewhat like a Japanese version of Steam, and you're right. Roid stands for Revolutionary Original Ideas Discovery.
So basically,
that's some fucking 1980s like Domino's Pizza ad campaign or something.
But of the games,
fucking Noid.
Of the games they. Of the games they showed, there's a PSP game. That was the first game they said that's going to be on Roid. But they implied that all of the games for PSP and DS they showed at this
going forward will be
on this Roid service, which is a big deal, really.
It's a big
you're not kidding. There's like a transforming.
Absolutely,
that's like a console.
That's your guide bot,
dude. If you go to the website, if you go to the official Roid
website,
no,
that's like their icon. I thought you meant there's like a physical.
No.
I thought we were talking
well,
some
actually,
80s shit where you have like the equivalent of a Dreamcast that turns into like Omnitron or whatever.
What's funny?
They had that at the press conference.
Yeah, at the press conference they announced that they're making a console, and they show a physical console, and then it was just a joke. There is no physical console,
but it transformed.
It transformed into this robot.
That prototype.
You can watch it on the website. It's pretty insane. But yeah, I think it shows at level 5.
That's like the Soundwave for the next generation. Soundwave,
come a long
Transformer
way.
That was like a boombox.
Nice. That was Blaster.
Actually,
Soundwave was a tape player, but it wasn't a boombox.
Oh well, dude. A boombox was anything with speakers on it, and my poor ass. Okay.
Oh dear.
A radio alarm clock was a boombox.
So it is a big step. It's a significant step forward for a Japanese publisher to really step into that digital distribution market.
And the idea of putting their PSP and DS games on PC ostensibly, or the thing is, Roid is allegedly Flash based, so theoretically it could even maybe work on other consoles,
on your PC
browsers.
People play it on PC.
Well, PC, but browsers too. So who knows?
Speaking of steps forward, on Monday, Xbox Live will be down.
Let's just comment though one last time how dumb of a name that is, Roid.
That's the you didn't have an English-speaking person do a little quick check on that.
All I can think of is hemorrhoid. I mean,
I'm surprised. No one else was thinking that.
Or
Roid,
Roid Rage.
What if id makes a version of Rage for the Roid platform?
All right. Anyway, on Monday, if you try to get on Xbox Live, you won't be able to. It's going to be down for up to 24 hours, and that's to start laying in the framework for the new Xbox Live experience.
This isn't down because they're then going to deploy
No.
TXE.
No, that's November.
TXE is November, right?
No, as a matter of fact, I saw it on Friday, and I can't talk about it now till Wednesday for some reason. It was Monday, but now I can talk about it on a Wednesday, and yeah, it's not ready for prime time yet. They're still working out stuff.
Looks nice, though.
I can't talk about it until next Wednesday. But next Thursday, when we record the show for next week, we will definitely talk about it.
They've shown enough screenshots and videos of it so far. I mean, it's not exactly a secret.
I just want to make sure I don't step on our toes. I mean, whatever. It's. I don't know. What do you think? Let me ask you a question. This won't be talking about it. What do you think of the naming of the characters in there as avatars?
That's what they are.
It's common.
But it's like going to a sandwich shop called Sandwich. I mean, it has no personality at all. Doesn't bother you, huh?
I think it
totally bothers me.
I think it's much better than
You'd rather it was something that had an X in it?
X-Buddies or me. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Avatar is perfect.
I think I like that they made a very sort of more grown-up word. The way they're distinguishing themselves from me's is.
I thought maybe they could call them peeps, but then everyone would think of like little marshmallow chickens, and that was kind of not cool.
Xbox peeps.
Xbox peeps.
You can call them.
See, it's awesome.
You can call them X-Buddies or peeps if you want. I mean, you can call them whatever you want.
Your little X-Buddy.
My
ex-buddy.
No, see, it doesn't. I agree that it's tough, but like, it's like so fucking generic. It's
Shame
like
faces.
Shame faces,
there
right?
We go.
It's like going
Game
into
face.
Sam's and buying like the Sam's Club cola. And I got cola. I don't know.
Even before that,
I think you're overanalyzing.
You think so? All right, I could be wrong. I've been wrong and stuff before. Big surprise. One thing we weren't wrong about was the countdown on the Bungie Net website, leading to a quick teaser video of something that'll leave you guessing and not knowing what the hell's going on. Although everyone seems to presume that it's going to be a Halo 3 episodic or single-player campaign add-on.
Mm-hmm. I hear it might be a squad-based single-player campaign add-on.
Really?
That's what I heard.
Why add-on?
Why does everyone think? I would say everyone's making all these conclusions.
Why not just an entire standalone full game that's concurrent with the events in the other Halo games, but from other points of view or something like that? I mean, I'm not saying I think it's that, but why? I mean, what makes you think that Bungie's going to make an expansion pack?
Well, the reason I was kind of introducing it that way is that I think it's funny how many conclusions people want. I think there's a lot of like, I want it to be this, so I'm going to jump to the conclusion.
Are they trying to fulfill a contract?
I don't know. Are they? I mean,
they definitely have a contract to fulfill.
Yeah. I mean, because it seems like who knows until we know what this is. But it doesn't sound like the next thing. Say you get done making Halo 3.
Is just inside the requirements of what one of the whatever it is 3 things they have to do.
Well, we know it's definitely Halo 3 because it says Halo 3.
I think it makes sense to do a big downloadable Halo 3 update. Same way we were talking about Burnout Paradise, to re-energize the SKU.
If this is
did you guys watch the video?
Yeah.
I don't
think we'll be getting it for free though.
The one thing that I read into watching the video is, there were a number of people who expressed a sentiment of, well, I really wanted Halo 3 to be that battle back on Earth and like in
weren't the first 4 levels on Earth?
Yeah, but I mean in the urban areas, like in identifiable places.
Like in Halo 2, like that stuff.
Well, Halo 2, you went back to the ring.
Yeah,
we started off though in
like
right. So exactly like the beginning of Halo 2. Exactly, there was a lot of people who always kind of wanted that like urban beginning of Halo 2 sort of experience. And the one thing I read into it is that's what they showed. I mean, they showed like this city being like bombed by these like meteor bombs or whatever the hell they are. Maybe it's finally going to give you that super urban fight off the Covenant in the midst of urban America or whatever.
Halo meets COD.
Do you think they will
Halo Resistance 2?
All right. Do you think this will be revealed?
Halo Resistance.
I don't think this will be revealed until after Gears comes out.
Oh yeah. I don't think.
Yeah, they're not.
Otherwise, it would have been announced at E3.
Right.
Dude,
something's up with this. This seems like there's so much weirdness. Like it was supposed to be announced at E3, but it wasn't. And then it's like, what is it?
The teaser could definitely hold them until spring, though, don't you think?
I think coming the week after all that leaked Halo MMO art, people are like, be careful what you do with Halo. Maybe just Halo everything isn't a good idea necessarily.
Yeah, and the rumors about like the Peter Jackson game. I mean, it's like you got to be careful. Too many Halo announcements at once. It's just going to confuse the hell out of people as to what's what. And then also, isn't this season they're releasing Halo Wars too?
It got pushed back, right?
Did it get I think it unofficially got pushed back.
It's not this year.
It's not this year, yeah. Anyway, Halo 3. What we do know about Halo 3 is it did add a title update this week. So Title Update 2 added. Along with some back-end changes, it added some new achievements. And one of the... no one knows whether it was an intended or just someone didn't think of it, results of this achievement edition is that 2 of the armor sets that were particularly difficult to get unlocks because you had to get a gamer score of 1,000, which would be the security and katana armor. You had to get all 49 of the game's achievements. They're suddenly easy to get because with the new achievements, instead of having to finish all the achievements in the game, you can do some of the achievements from the game and then get a couple of 3 of the extra add-on achievements if you're like right at the end of the game and about to get all your achievements.
So the unlocks are based on the number of achievements.
Evidently, they were unlocked
specific achievements.
Right. They weren't. So now that you have 30 new achievements in this title update, and you only needed to get 49 total. If you were getting near the end of the first set that came with the game, and some of those are pretty damn difficult to get. Now you can add on some from the title update and magically pop over the limit and get your.
So hardcore players complaining because
sure, of course, because the badge of honor is gone.
Yeah.
It's like you fought your ass off to get your security and katana armor, and suddenly there's these dudes running around who just bump.
You probably should just end it all at that point. If you're upset that other people have your armor in Halo, something's wrong.
Shit makes me sad. But for some reason, Shane, I can imagine you being like the one in like Phantasy Star Online or something who had to have like the best armor.
I had an egg blaster and a chainsaw.
And you were probably proud of him.
I was.
You duped him.
I might have.
Ben Fritz over at Variety's Cutscene blog brought word that Avi Arad, did I get that correct?
Oh, yeah. You sure did.
He used to be
you don't like
Marvel.
him.
He controls Marvel.
Yeah.
Right, so he's optioned the Mass Effect movie rights. You sound like that's not a good thing, though.
I'm not that happy with his work at Marvel.
Why is that? I mean, what's
You're a Marvel
the downside?
connoisseur.
I don't know. I think since he took over the Marvel in film...
He signed Spider-Man. I mean, he did that deal, the first Spider-Man.
Yeah, but you saw the slate of like the 7 new films that are on their way. I know they're doing a lot of movies. We'll see.
You like the Ghost Rider movie, right?
I can't wait for the sequel.
You liked it, though,
No,
the original.
I hated it.
I don't know, dude. I would say that over the last few years, the superhero movies definitely experienced a great big renaissance. I mean,
that's called The Dark Knight. It's not called X-Men 3, and it's not even called Iron Man, and it's definitely not called,
Spider-Man? I mean,
Spider-Man 3 was so good. Avi Arad, it was his idea to put Venom in it. Yeah.
He had nothing to do with Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Wow. Who knew this was going to hit?
Anyway, continue.
This hits such a nerve with Shane.
What do you think
about?
about...
You know what it is? It's Tinseltown. He's all about the Hollywood scene.
Well, let's see on the comic front. Like, what do you think about what they're doing with the Icon line?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, I just want to see if it's all the...
No. The last Marvel thing I was aware of was Ultimates.
Anyway, I think Mass Effect could make a really interesting movie. There's a big world there to explore.
When are they going to finish the games?
When are they going to finish the games?
Yeah, they've not said anything about the second one.
I mean, would this film be just based on the first game?
Yeah, that's a
Wasn't there a rumor kicking around as well that they might do it for DS?
What?
Really?
Yeah.
Like building on the whole Sonic, the engine they built for their Sonic game? Really?
Same kind of story, different perspective on it.
Maybe.
Interesting.
Transmedia orgy.
We also on the movie front, we got some information on the upcoming Sims movie.
This sounds pathetic.
It totally does, doesn't it? So let me tell you what it is, and then we can laugh about it together. Producer John Davis gave his summary to Collider, and we got this through N-Guy Kroll's Level Up blog from Newsweek. He says, The Sims, as you know, you can control your imaginary world, right? Well, and our movie, a young man, a 16-year-old kid of a 16-year-old kid of a 14-year-old kid and his friend.
Typo.
Right, we have a stick next to it. Get their hands on this thing called the Sims Infinity Pack, which is a very strange video game. Store was just there for that moment. Seeming wasn't all that. Anyway, the upshot of all this is that these kids are, the movie premise of the movie is that the kids are playing this special expansion pack for Sims, and they realize that they're playing the real world around them.
And do they kick it off by putting bras on their heads? And
this started,
Kelly LeBrock turns
someone
up.
was playing The Sims like, dude, imagine if you could really control this to the neighbors. And it's like, yeah, what about, like, this chick?
I hope the movie has a scene where someone gets locked in a room with no doors and windows and pisses and pukes himself to death.
And then goes and tries and cooks a barbecue while they have no cooking skills.
This sound
and
like
catches
an
on fire.
movie?
Dude,
it's like some weird science shit.
It sounds like a bad plot from an episode of Small Wonder or something. It's hard to believe.
Here, I'll just show you the
totally
picture that Sean picked to go with it. Sean Science, who wrote it up
Jeff
for us.
Green, if you're listening,
perfect picture.
Save this movie, Jeff Green.
Dude, it's the weird science picture with the bras in their heads.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, Jeff Green, go save.
Well, he even acknowledged in the interview with Collider that yes, it would be like weird science.
So
there you go.
Who didn't love? I mean, all it needs is Kelly LeBrock.
Have you seen Kelly LeBrock lately?
No.
A whole lot of her to go around.
Really?
Yeah.
Not the MILF she had the potential to evolve into.
I wonder if it's gonna have any similarities with like Bruce Almighty and all that stuff too. And there's kind of conceptual overlap. You have a godlike character.
Oh yeah.
Well, they may have bigger fish to fry over at EA because they've been challenged with a class action lawsuit over the Spore DRM. This comes to us from Courthouse News Service, which Shack News grabbed first. The complaint alleges that consumers are given no controls, rights, or options over secure ROM. The program is uninstallable. Once installed, it becomes a permanent part of the consumer's software portfolio. Even if the consumer uninstalls Spore and entirely deletes it from the computer, secure ROM remains a fixture in the computer, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, basically, this is the culmination of all of the backlash over the DRM in Spore, is that now EA has been hit with a class action lawsuit. It seems like it's sort of snowballed them. At the same time, they also announced that they've sold over 1 million copies of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you guys think? When's the DRM storm going to blow over with Spore? Is there going to be, and what's the ultimate end of it going to be? Will there be any? What's the fallout going to be? Anything?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that are never going to come across the DRM. Particularly in Spore's consumer base, there's going to be people that, they have a laptop, they stuck it on once, they played it for as long as they're going to play it, and they'll never play it ever again, and they're never going to come across the fact that they might not be able to install it a couple of years from now.
Those same people got so many cookies and shit on their computer too.
Yeah,
all sorts of malware.
But those are like the Sims consumers who are like ostensibly the Spore consumers, and it always seems to me the people who are really really bitching about DRM are the people more likely to be torrenting the game. Like really, like if you're that savvy and that into it and that upset about it, I don't know.
I mean, I think the fundamental thing that that it assumes you're sort of guilty until proven innocent aspect to it, I think is bad. But I think there's an awful lot of consumers that are never going to be exposed to this,
right?
Because
that seems to be the
normal
implication from the
consumers
sales.
don't rebuild their PC every 3 months and go back and reinstall all the games that they wanted to play. Most real consumers these days have a Gateway or a Dell laptop, and if it can run games, that they have one game, and if it's Spore, stick it in, it works.
So as part of the enthusiast world, we're acutely attuned to this, but the general public's just not catching it. It's not a big deal.
I don't think so.
Not mattering to them. That's the same thing that EA has argued, and first they argued it with the number of people they showed who had tried to install it more than 3 times. They said there was a very small percentage. We had that last week. And then,
it does say on the box that it uses secure ROM, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm saying, I'm sure it does. It's just still people can complain about it. I mean,
well, they can complain by not buying the game. I mean,
that'll probably come up.
Pragmatic approach there, Sean.
That'll probably come up in the lawsuit where they're like, it says right here that you're buying
if you get
it.
food and it says it's like it contains MSG
Sulfites.
or whatever, and you don't want it, then don't get it.
Sue.
All right. We also had the preliminary coverage last week on the closure of Ensemble Studios, and the picture that was being painted at that time made it seem that this was a sort of different arrangement than Microsoft had pursued, for instance, with FOSSA Studios. The blog post that Bruce Shelley posted on the Ensemble's website makes it sound more and more like it might be.
I love Bruce Shelley. I watched him fall asleep on a GDC panel once. It was awesome. He's just awesome. He was so bored by the people that were speaking, he just nodded off in his chair.
Was he in the audience or he's on the panel?
He was on the panel.
Wow. Wow. I'd say the bluntest quote he had was that we don't fit in the future plans of Microsoft Game Studios as an internal in studio, so we're out.
See, that sounds very different because the spin last week was that, it's a wonderful transition for both sides that allows us to work in a new harmonious partnership.
They're all going to go and make a new studio that's going to make games for Microsoft.
He's not part of that new studio.
Nope, he is actually at the close. He says, "I definitely will not be part of that."
He was Ensemble. I mean, he was the heart of it.
So in all fairness, he had become less of the heart of Ensemble over the last few projects.
But last week we talked about how does this mean that the Age of Empires studio is going to launch? Bruce is Age of Empires,
right? And from the reluctance, I've been badgering Microsoft to give me an interview, to talk about the future of the new internal products. I mean, because they still own Age of Empires. What's going to happen with Age of Empires? I mean, the only thing I got was there'll be more Age of Empires, but evidently they won't be Ensemble games, that could be disastrous.
2 days ago, Nick Sutton and I were interviewing Ken Lobb, and Nick brought this up. He brought Ensemble up, and Ken Lobb kind of dodged the question a little bit, but then he went on to say, we're going to work with the new team, blah blah blah, everything's great. And that really does seem different than what this guy is saying.
Bruce says, I mentioned with regret the closing of several quality game studios over the past several years, but I never considered Ensemble would join the list. Everyone in our studio was shocked, and I think remains very disappointed that this is going to happen. I mean, that's pretty freaking hardcore right there, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
that is no small thing.
A year ago, would they have been on your list of predicted studios to go away? I don't think anyone would have.
Especially when Microsoft continues to insist that its commitment to the PC platform with the Games for Windows stuff. Does that mean? What does it mean? Is like you're saying where they're going to farm out, they're going to continue to make Age of Empires games, but have other people make them, and it's like more cost effective than running their own studio, or that that kind of game isn't even in their plans for the future of the platform.
But they've certainly milked the Age of Empires franchise aggressively. It sold well for them.
And if you look at that Halo MMO, we're kind of making fun of it because some of the art didn't look that great, but they said they had a working, running prototype up, and that might have been a PC and 360 game. Who knows? I don't know if you talked much about that, but yeah, it's surprising.
Now, the only details about that came out because the artist on the game posted like a ton of screenshots on his Flickr page, and that's where everyone pulled them from.
Wow.
But there was no detail on what the game's... All of the commentary on the game came from deconstructing the screenshots, basically.
I got a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, something just came across the wire. I saw it happening.
Breaking news.
Dave Ellis Courier
and
Service.
It fits in perfectly with the failed expectations for Microsoft on the Gamerscore blog. Which is one of the Microsoft internally run blogs. They're announcing that Fable 2 is really going to be out on October 21st. It's going to be done. It's in great shape. Oh, but online co-op won't be ready on the final shipping version. So all that stuff about pop into the orbs and pop out of the orbs, everything
we
checked out.
Did they say when it's coming out?
It's still definitely coming. And as a gamer, the author who wrote this, which isn't listed here because I just have this printout, says they're glad they're taking the time to make it right instead of just rushing out the door. Lionhead and Microsoft Games are looking to get that update out within the first week of launch.
Does this change
in North America?
I'm curious. Does this change the score that Peter Molyneux gave his own game? And will he shut up about how much everybody he works for loves his game?
And didn't he tell us that we should judge him by this? I mean, didn't he say famously, just a couple of weeks ago, judge me by this game?
And he's never going to overpromise and underdeliver again.
He's only under-delivering if they don't deploy it.
If it doesn't ship?
The co-op game?
Oh, yeah, but come on, man, this is really sloppy when you're getting,
no,
serious...
No, but come on, fundamentally, are people that are going to buy Fable 2 buying it because of that co-op option?
I think a lot of them are. It's an RPG, dude. Are you going to... I'll play through it once, I'll play through it again. No.
But you have to be online to play co-op in the first place, so, going online to get the patch or whatever isn't the biggest deal, say for example, if you're I'm buying it for, it doesn't have split screen co-op.
No. But Fable is intrinsically is built to play multiple times, so you can explore the different paths. So you play it through, become familiar with the world, and then they deploy the co-op, and then you're in a position to go say, "Hey, we should go do this thing over here."
When they announced that
the
co-op, I was excited
about it. Strategic thing. Imagine because they don't want you to resell the game, and if they're a month later or 2 months later, they're we're going to introduce co-op.
That'd be huge.
We're going to see this kind of shit a lot. Games, remember that GameStop quote? That the two things that they didn't want is digital distribution or things that plugged into games that made it so that it was difficult for people to sell it on. We're going to see more and more games with add-on stuff coming soon after.
Oh, come on,
that binds it directly to the machine.
Well, guys, they're not. Even Microsoft is not trying to spin this as an intentional thing. They're saying we apologize. Lionhead sends a huge thank you for all of its Fable fans and asks for your patience and understanding. This is not something they're spinning as a.
But so what? It's still coming.
Because they were already on the record though for saying
it's been the focus of the previews for the last 4 months as well. It really has.
Yeah? It's been a really big deal. To me, it has been a huge part. It's part of what turned my opinion on this game was the drop in and drop out through the orbs is really very cool.
In fact, the last 3 times I saw him, that's what it was all about. It was I'm in my friend's world. I'm interacting with things. It looked awesome.
The last time I talked to him, when we did that interview that was on the 1UP FM, he was talking about how it was so cool because there was this weird society emerging where people would find that you'd see all the orbs in certain places because that was where people would gather to meet one another. It does say that the orbs will still be in the game, and you'll still be able to see your friends, and you'll be able to chat and trade with them, but you just won't be able to pull them into your world.
Something.
So I don't know. I hate to see a feature not come out with a game because even though it says they'd like to get it out in the first week, where's my Madden patch?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. If it's the first couple of weeks, who cares?
So let's see. If it's the first couple of weeks, then that's one thing. But
that's not disastrous. It's
But what if it drags? What about when it drags out? Lionhead is notorious for letting stuff drag out.
But this is unfortunate that we're talking on this podcast. Both Little Big Planet and Fable 2 have a component, an online cooperative component that was promised that is not shipping, and it's a bad trend.
Yeah.
So Shane, last 2 things that I have here are both from the interview we had as the afterthoughts with Kojima on Metal Gear Solid.
Entertaining stuff in there.
Did you do this?
No, it was done by I believe Billy.
It's really good. There's so much stuff here. I don't even know where to begin with it. First of all, we have some of his comments on what went wrong while they were what went wrong. I mean, amazingly, what went wrong while they were developing.
He's very
Metal Gear
candid,
Solid 4.
actually, in this interview.
Dude, that shit's already sold millions of copies.
He can be as candid as he wants.
But he's very candid about like the failures of MGO in it.
Yeah, I mean, what stood out to you? You're the big Metal Gear fan. I feel like
from this interview, I
feel like I'm not in the right space.
I feel
talking about
him being
this stuff.
honest about like what happened with MGO and he's very disappointed and no one's really playing it. And then the really exciting stuff is when he talks about Metal Gear Solid 5, and even though he says he doesn't want to be involved, that he has like 3 distinct concepts for it. But he kind of hopes that the team doesn't take his ideas.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That he hopes the team picks it up and runs with it now, so he can go and just be the producer.
Right, and be thinking about. I mean, be withdrawn somewhat from the day-to-day pushing the buttons.
But I wonder if people just didn't want to try MGO for the same reasons I didn't, and that's because like for a brief time when Splinter Cell introduced its multiplayer game, it seemed as though here's this whole new way to approach game design for an action game that's online. And then it was quickly like with each sequel, it's like there's fewer people that we're going to continue to play because it's just like so frustrating and you get your ass kicked and so much can go wrong that when I saw it was like, I'm going to have a whole lot of people on my friends list on this game before I even consider.
And the ultimate failing of MGO is its foolish idea of having Konami IDs, not using PSN, not using your friends list. It was wrong, backwards from the beginning.
I thought it was really interesting where he talked about how building on the new machine, that the biggest problem wasn't so much getting to grips with the technology, but getting the team to really have like an understanding of what they could and couldn't accomplish within the framework of what the machine could do, and getting them to a mentality where instead of worrying about can we do this or can we not do this, just trying to do it. He's talking about the difference between when they did Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3, where that same thing, in 2 they were worried about, well, can we get the machine to do this? Can we get it to do that? Whereas in 3, they already knew what the parameters were as far as the technical framework they were working in, so they were just free to design and work, and they weren't worried about caught up in any of that stuff. I think that's a really cool insight into like the design philosophy.
Yeah, it's a good read, and he didn't do much press after the release of Metal Gear, so it's kind of a rare treat.
Yeah,
I mean they've always kind of been like that. I mean they've always been very experimental with what can it do. I mean even all the way back to doing stuff with the Rumble and the memory card and the like really digging into what the machine is capable of doing and tapping into things that you can communicate to the player. And I always find it kind of disappointing when they got to the games where they were more comfortable with it because they weren't as experiment. MGS3 wasn't as sort of in-your-face experimental as MGS2.
It reined it in.
Yeah.
It reined it in for sure, yeah.
But I think people loved it more.
Right, but I think 4 has more in common with even 1.
Right.
Because it's like...
It takes risks.
Yeah, they
tries
so many risks with
and
the design, with what your expectations of it were, and
we need more developments, across the board. Development team taking risks because the problem is, too many of the same style games. Like, you're just copying other people's stuff.
And
but the thing is, few people can afford to take the risk that Kojima Productions can.
Ken Levine can take some risks.
I hope it can, and I hope to help out with that.
Oh yeah.
I hope you're excited about it. I hope you guys just
give us a little hint. Give us a little hint.
It's going to be good.
Is it does it use a mat, and does it involve like,
do I have to sit on your game?
It involves mudsliding and like plastic mats.
Dude, your game is awesome. How awesome is your game?
It's so awesome, dude.
All right, that's Sean. We must
signing
off.
off.
I want to say my final thing to like just again thank everyone and thank One Up Yours audience and One Up in General's audience. They've just been super cool, and I'm going to catch up to all. I mean, I have so many seemingly nice messages from people that I have to catch up with when I finally move, and just
watch out for
you guys appreciate your awesome audience. Make fun of them now and then, but for the most part, appreciate how cool they are.
But dude, watch out! You might get like some anthrax in the mail or something.
What?
Yeah. I'm just saying, people are gonna be mad.
I did have to tell. Well, I didn't have to, but I decided to tell someone to fuck off over the weekend.
And that was cyberstalker.
I added a bunch of people to Steam on my friends list. I hadn't done that in a while, and I was playing Warhead, and this one dude just keeps messaging me, and of course it makes this intrusive sound, and I can see the text flicker, and I tabbed out, and I'm like, hey man, I'm playing this game right now. Like I'll hit you up later. Just like chill out. And so I play again, and he keeps doing it, and then. Like I ignore him, and then about a half hour later, he's like, "Dude, I see you're not playing anymore." Because I guess it's like it tells people like what I'm doing. He's like, "You're not playing anymore. What's your excuse now, man? Aren't you reading what I'm saying?" He's still messaging, and I just went over. I was like, "Fuck you, dude!" And then I took him all. I like
click
erased him.
Goodbye. Thanks for playing.
Yeah.
That was sad. That made me sad. But that's such an anomaly. Everyone else is like just super cool. I have nothing but good things to say about them.
I would agree. I would totally agree. We have a great audience. I mean, it was evident at PAX, right?
A lot of love. A lot of love.
And even last week, Shane, you were saying
there were these European people like staking out our lobby looking for us.
What?
They didn't see you?
Came down the lobby to go. I was on the way to the optometrist to pick up some contacts, and like this guy comes running at me. Sean! I was like, what's up, dude? And he's, he was just a fan. I was in town and he said he wanted to hang out and hopefully he could see someone. And so I told him I was going to pick up some contacts and that he should wait and hang out with some other guys coming down from lunch. And then that same day, someone else came up when I was outside on a break.
Dude,
wow.
And he was cool. He's from Fancy Pants Gamers or something. I still have to. He gave me his card, and he was just like in town for something else and came by to. Hopefully, he would get a sighting of someone, which is pretty insane, but that's nice. Super cool.
Totally overwhelming.
Sean Elliott getting stalked.
I'm going invisible now. I'm off to
Stealth mode.
To the land of I'll make fake accounts and troll one-up forums now.
Nice. That's a great place. So thank you for that. Tina says thanks in advance. Much love. All right, I guess we're out of here. So for Shane and John and Sean signing out for the last time.
Happy trails.
Yep, walking out the building after we take this headset off, and that's it. It was fun, and all of you too, John, Garnet, Shane.
Sean, don't look back. Never look back.
What's that from?
That's what Shmi told Anakin, dude, and he listened.
You made it sound like, what's her name from Rambo 2? Like, Rambo, what mean expendable? You're not expendable.
That's also valid. These are both valid quotes.
Oh, dear. I think on that note right there, this is Garnet telling you thank you. We'll be back next week with the pre-TGS issue. Until then, we are out.